Hello and welcome to The Late Shift. My name is Val and I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts
James, Saul
and Jonah.
And today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. So we've had a little rejig of our usual podcast format. So today, when we'll be covering Today in History, you'll be hearing not just from me and my wonderful sources, but also from my incredible co-hosts. So each one of us has brought a story forward. In this episode, we won't be having famous facts, but we will in fact be having Google reviews. So, how have you guys been? Are you excited to try out our new format? Have you got interesting stories to the table? Are you nervous to have your turn at the mic to be the host reading out the information?
No, that's what the revolution was for. Thrown off the oppressive. Equality.
I just think this will be...
Possibly anarchy.
We'll try and find a healthy balance between equality and anarchy.
This will be quite fun because James and I are the only two who have actually delivered Today in History style content. So I'm really excited to hear from the stories that you...
There was that one time Saul did, but we had to expunge it from the record.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes, it did.
It was bad. People got hurt.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just thought that just shouting, just throwing my arms about was history.
The less said about the Barnsley incident, the better.
So let's kick things off with our first story, which comes from me.
So all that talk about revolutionising the format is slightly undercut.
Yeah, I realised that now.
Val
the
is the
moment I said it.
Napoleon of revolutionaries. Do you know what I mean? Which is like...
You'll all get a turn, but mine's first.
Mine's first.
But too much change would fry our silly
The
brains.
problem is that king wasn't a grand enough title.
Exactly.
Emperor is far better.
You know, some people are more equal than others. That's what it's all about.
So make Val a pig.
Napoleon the pig.
And
From Animal Farm.
Actually, speaking of Animal Farm and equality, today's story comes from 1697 and it's about Peter the Great.
Russia.
Yes, so we'll be talking about Russia. So Peter the Great, on this day, on the 10th of March, went on his 2-year tour of Western Europe.
He was the first one, wasn't he?
You're right, Jonah. He was the first Russian king, and I mean, throughout his reign, he also became emperor of the Russian Empire, which I didn't know existed because I didn't get taught Russian history. I got taught Soviet history, like a good little satellite state citizen.
Not empire.
The thing I found really interesting is that the Russian Empire at its height was the third largest empire in the world, obviously only smaller than the Mongol Empire and the British Empire, and the census of the population showed that it had the third largest population, only less than China and India, which I mean is the case. Still, to most places. If you're trying to compete for population,
if you draw a circle around China and India, and kind of Southeast Asia, there are more people living within the circle than out of the circle.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I exclude China in all of the... if we're deciding who's the country that does this. It's like when we were deciding who's the biggest tea drinker. It's like, oh, it's China. Well, that's cheating. You just have a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's also
That's
like
how they won the Olympics.
The two most popular beers in the world are two beers that are only drunk in China. Yeah. They're not sold anywhere else in the world. And yet, because there's so many of them, it's just cheating.
No, but as I said,
I know your game, China.
That's how they won the 2008 Olympics.
Yeah.
We looked it up the other day because I remember the ceremony in Beijing, because I remember how utterly turned off I was by the British one because it was so dull. But like the Beijing Olympic opening ceremony was actually pretty sick.
Yeah, it was really epic.
Really
And if it wasn't on point, then whoever made a mistake would have just been dragged out back. It's perfect.
And they drummed for their lives. Let's just say.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that I remember when the Chinese kind of like troupe came in, and they I think they had something like 600 plus athletes competing. Like China in the Beijing Olympics won the most medals for any one country
because they
in
submitted
any
an athlete for each
everything
tournament.
Essentially,
right?
they just flooded the field with Chinese athletes, and
which is a good strategy when you have loads of people.
Yeah, but the record is for most Olympic wins, like medals in a single Olympics, is China in the Beijing Olympics, which I'm sure Xi Jinping is very happy with. It's the whole like.
Do you think he rubs his Winnie the Pooh belly? When
Whoa! This is no longer being played in China.
Yeah, congratulations.
Sorry.
Instantly.
I could just cut it.
You're going to take us down to the 1,000 Acre Woods and have a boom.
Okay, but going back to my story. So yes, Peter the Great was the first Russian king or Russian emperor who decided to go forth and visit other parts of Europe. And it was this journey that changed Russia from being a very medieval, traditionalist society
to a slightly less medieval, traditionalist society.
Yes,
that was
obviously.
behind all its rivals.
No, because it was medieval in its own way. But after Peter went to Europe,
Medieval in a European way.
he became medieval in a European way because he essentially introduced slavery to Russia because this was pretty common in normal Europe, where your servants couldn't leave unless they had like signed permission from the
something people don't read.
Or marry.
Is freedom of movement.
Freedom of movement
is a huge thing
was
that comes
very
in.
limited in Europe. That wasn't the case in Russia, but after he visited Europe, he brought back that value. But obviously, that's a real big negative. But he brought a lot of.
Just like, come on, guys. They are so oppressive out west.
Which is really funny, because obviously, I guess the narrative, so the 20th century and I guess the 19th century, is Europeans going, boy, Russia's a bit like, come on, guys, ease off now.
Yeah.
But to think that we
they learned it from watching it.
Yeah, it's like, the race car driving, the Europeans had their foot down, the Russians tried to catch up, and then, hitting that corner, the Europeans eased off the pedal.
Well, we
Russians
end
just
or
like, no.
break them, and then they just crash straight into the 1917 revolution.
Yeah, basically.
Well, Russia at the time was very religious, and their kind of sciences and education was very, very limited. In fact, Peter himself had really poor vocabulary and made spelling errors in most of the stuff that he wrote, because the patriarch of Russia had this idea that he wanted to limit the Latinization of Russia. And although Russia had loads of merchants from different countries, in fact, Peter's inspiration to want to go to Europe to get more support and education about their military strategies came from the fact that he spent a lot of time with German merchants that were settled near a village that he was staying at. But he himself had really poor vocabulary because the patriarch actually fired the guy that kind of was the better teacher. So his brothers and sisters, who were older than him, had much better education, whereas he was a bit of a dickhead. But the thing is that he kind of counteracted that by taking active interest in these merchants that he had available to him, because he was a prince still, so he was able to talk to them and learn a lot about the job of being a king from them. In fact, for a long time, so he was crowned king when he was 10 years old. So it's a little bit complicated, but essentially his father had loads of children. Peter was actually the 14th child of the cohort of children. 14th.
Wow.
But he was the first from...
coming from an Irishman.
But he was the first son from the second marriage. And obviously...
One woman popped out 13 children.
Yeah.
My God, champion.
Yeah. Well, to be fair...
Here, a mother of Imperial Russia.
Yeah. But the thing with his children from the first marriage is that a lot of them had health defects. I mean, there is argument to say that, the issue was mainly in the dad, because later on in Peter's life he developed like a nervous tic in his face, like he'd have muscle contractions and things like that. So
good old CGI
twitch, like in
The Alienist,
exactly.
Can we point out this show, the main murderer in the entire show, spoilers, they find out that he has a facial tic, like a facial twitch which is defining. And when you finally meet the villain in the last episode, they CGI'd this facial tic, and it literally looks like someone's taken the Photoshop blur tool and gone down the side of his face.
It looks like when you're messing around in Photoshop, like when you go
you kind of smudge it all up.
Why wouldn't they just have him do a fake tic?
And this is the thing. Well, this character appears in one sequence essentially. You only see his face at the end. Why not just go, excuse me, extra? Yes. Can you actually do a facial twitch? No. Well then, fuck off. We'll get someone who can. Why do you go sitting again? What's fair? Emma Watson. Would you like to be in Beauty and the Beast remake? Yes. I can't sing though. Oh, we'll just auto tune it. It's hire someone who can.
So yes, so his half siblings from his father's first marriage, a lot of them were sickly. So when his father died, one of his older brothers inherited the throne, and then he died, and there was another brother that was before him. So he was a little bit older than Peter, but he was also very sick. But his mum got the support of the patriarch, and they made the argument that Peter should be king at the same time. So essentially, for a point, from the age of 10 till Peter was 17, he was ruling with his brother. His brother was not much older than him. I think his brother was about 15 when he was 10, and his brother didn't know much about rulership because he was never trained for it, and education, as I said, has been particularly poor. So the two of them had a throne that had 2 seats, and it had a little window in it, and through the window their elder sister was giving them advice about how to behave in court, which I find like really weird. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting visual because and you can still, if you go to the museums in Russia, you can look at this throne because it still exists, and it's. Of
course, the communists kept the throne that was double-seated and had the advice hole to like perfectly go. The Tsars were idiots. Of course, they kept that throne.
So then, because he was ruling alongside with his brother, and he didn't spend a lot of time in Moscow, simply because of the fact that his mum was not very much liked by the first family. I mean, why would they like her? So they spent a lot of time living outside of the city, and Peter spent a lot of his time kind of playing war. He was really interested in military strategy, to the point where he essentially came up with this like little mock army. And the thing is, it was really endearing and funny when he was 13 and he was doing all that. His army had actual cannons, and year by year became more and more equipped to be an actual army. So when it came to the point where Peter was 17 years old, he had like a sizable army to be able to actually. Can you
imagine slowly but surely swapping out your Playmobiles for real soldiers?
Yeah.
You know the whole thing when relatives go like, I haven't seen you in 5 years, how you've grown. And be like, oh, Pete, you still playing with those toys? No, I have a full regiment with cannons. Sorry, what? You know when your friend gets really suddenly into something? Where they're like, oh, how are you doing on that? They're like, I'm just dabbling with it. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, I bought everything. I bought all the advice books and everything. It's like, oh, Pete, how's it good? I got actual cannons and men. My army's real now. You're like, that's rather dangerous, Peter. I preferred it when they're all made of wood. Is that a real gun?
He was hanging out with this friend who was, one of his friends was like this older gentleman who was like a German merchant, and he taught him the majority of the stuff that he kind of knew about Europe up until this point. And they found a boat,
It's around in Moscow.
They just found a random abandoned boat.
Here.
It was English.
Where is she?
And Peter actually invested loads of his. I don't know, I don't think he had pocket money. Clearly, if he could afford a fucking cannon, he had a lot of fucking money.
He invested chunks of the Imperial
No, but I'll tell
treasury.
you what, the man who's dragged a boat to Moscow.
Mate, he came from
He
from Tajikistan. He heard there was sea to the west. Got to Moscow.
And he's like, okay, well, I'm not getting anywhere. Would you like to buy my boat? And Peter's there with his mock army of real men now, being like, that's too extravagant for me.
So what a way to low-key accrue a private army. It's like, it's just toys for my son.
The really interesting thing as well is
my kid's got Pokemon cards.
Yeah, PMC Blackwall was founded as a birthday present.
Daddy, I want hired killers for Christmas.
Now, I got you that regiment of Polish Hussars last time. Hired killers! I need pike support!
Bombardiers!
So obviously St. Petersburg is called St. Petersburg after Peter.
Yeah.
And he started building the city after he came back from Europe.
What was he, 16?
Did he want a toy castle? And he was like, let's just build an actual city.
He went from Legos to the Winter Palace.
No,
I need somewhere to put my toy army.
So his toy army, right? So he had this toy army. Then they built a toy port, a toy boat. Again, there weren't toys. They were fully operational.
So he did do that. That's St. Petersburg is essentially his Wendy house.
No, but hold on. But before he left Europe, when he was still a boy, when he was, I want to say 17, he actually built a little mock city in the middle of this village that he was staying, which ended up being inspiration for how St. Petersburg ended up looking. So he's always been into this stuff.
I'm just saying.
So when he came back from Europe and people were like, we can't believe you moved the capital of Russia from Moscow to St. Petersburg, why you would rebuild it in kind of this more Western style. How people didn't go, oh wait, you did that when you were 17.
This was just
clear. You had a little model, ready to go.
St. Peter would be the most hardcore Warhammer player, wouldn't he? You can imagine a Games Workshop all at the back.
Yeah.
How many points is your army? He's like, I didn't do it in points, I did it in Imperial Treasury Reserves.
No, James. It's okay, so I'm going to move some of my Chaos troops forward, and then he just look at him like, well, what are you going to do for your turn? He just and the guy just walks in, just shoots the table with a gun.
Just a cannon shot rings out.
Now, jog on.
Yeah. I win again, it seems. Seems so clear. Like bayonet at the back of your neck. Like.
But he's interested in like military sciences.
Obviously, I mean the man's. I love him.
Yeah. So because of the fact that he took an interest in military, he sharpened his understanding of arithmetic, geometry, and other war sciences. And so, because he was spending so much time around the German Quarter, at the time there was the Russian-Turkish War was taking place.
One of the several.
Yeah, Peter actually left at the age of 26 to go on the European tour because he wanted to get some support to help fight off the Ottoman.
The Great Game, as it was called.
Unfortunately for him,
was Britain versus Russia.
No, the Great. Well, yeah.
To be fair, Russia played a lot of great games.
Yeah.
their games are all great because they've got a lot of shit. So
I was just thinking, I don't like playing war with Peter anymore. It's got too dangerous.
Got
you
too
know how
serious.
kids like play soldier?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like Pete brings his regiment. It's scary.
Pete just bayonet charge for real.
yeah, so Peter goes off to Europe to get support to help him fight the Turks.
Plenty of that about.
Unfortunately for him, at the time, Europe were kind of involved in fighting Spain. So they had no time for Peter. However,
that's because at that time, Spain, people don't realise how massive Spain's empire was.
Yeah, it was huge.
It's huge. It's the idea of you at this era, if you're thinking about Spain and Spanish America, you look at the size of Spanish America in comparison to like a fur colony in Canada and like Louisiana, just about where some of the French are like, we have it is in the woods and it is a holiday.
Yeah, French Louisiana was bigger than Louisiana.
No, but at this point they were coastal holdings, whereas Spain had like New Spain, so much territory, and was just ploughing the world with gold and silver. So really, they were the big boys that people try and take down.
So Peter went to Europe and he visited Riga, Königsberg, Brandenburg, Holland, England, Venice, the Vatican, and Austria. He got to meet Isaac Newton when he visited the UK.
What did he talk to him about? He can't spell.
He wasn't literate, but he could.
Well, he
had
just made spelling errors. And you're
he
going to
found
tell him he rocks up with his toy regiment and he's there. He spells spaghetti wrong. You're not going to be like Isaac Newton. You spelled spaghetti wrong. You silly Luddite. Bang.
He didn't bring his whole army with him to Europe. He brought it was like a conference of 20.
The 20 best dressed.
Yeah, 20 good men, as we've seen in Game of Thrones.
That's all you need.
So he met Isaac Newton. He then he met him in obviously in the Royal Observatory, but then he also got to visit the Westminster House of Commons and stuff. And when he saw the Westminster barristers, he asked his translator,
if you could have one.
He was like, what are these weird dudes in wigs and shit? And
which is what many criminals in Britain have asked as they've been brought to the Crown Court.
And his translator goes, well, these people help uphold law in Britain or whatever. And Peter goes, oh, that's funny. Where I come from, there's only 2 lawmakers, and I'm thinking of killing the other one.
And then the bastards immediately look at each other and went, fair game.
Then he got to go to the House of Commons or House of Lords. I'm not too sure which one.
Lords as Lords, Commons as MPs.
Yeah.
I think it was Lords because they were talking to the King.
Yeah, back then King didn't talk to the Commons so much. Fair enough.
Yeah, so I think it was
It must
House
have been
of...
very strange for him to see that.
It was
because obviously it's such a constitutional monarchy by this point. He'd be like, where's your big toy army? And he'd be like, I'd have to ask these guys if I could have a toy army. And he's like, ugh.
He was actually really impressed by the fact that the people who were speaking to the king were being so candid about what was actually going on in different areas of the world, because of course his experience of it is that when a buyer comes to him, he will say, it is going fantastic, of course, everything's great and dandy, and he wanted to incorporate more honesty.
Tartar Raiders? Never heard of them.
He said, we have much to learn from the English in that sense. So supposedly when he was gone, there was a coup that was led by his sister to...
She decided to climb through the advice hall and take some real power for herself.
She was like, what the fuck? Because
it's been me the whole time!
No, just every time he comes back in, like she's chipping away the bricks, it's just slightly bigger.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. She's like half sitting on the throne, like it's really awkward.
Her other half's still in the hole, but her torso's in and she's just leaning on the chair.
Yeah, tell me more.
So when he was away, his sister staged a coup to try and overthrow him and take back power, because she still very much believed, because she was older, because she was from the first marriage, that she should take
She was
control.
on the right side of the advice hole.
She was also on the right side of the advice hole. Also, he, obviously, because the country was so traditionalist and medieval up until this point, the fact that Peter wanted to come back with Western ideals and turn Russia into something it never was, there was a massive fear of Latinization, as I said.
Yeah.
So she basically wanted to overthrow him. She felt like she was in the right, but it failed because the toy army boys, and by the time that Peter came back,
The Playmobil boys.
the Playmobil division had already sorted out his sister.
Do you think she thought they were actually still wooden guns and stuff? She's like, oh, he's sending in his stuff regiment. Those are real cannons. Who gave him real cannons? How long has he had them? They've all got guns.
He came back. He was so angry at the fact that
He
that
shoved her
this
back
happened.
through the advice hole.
He basically rounded up everybody who was associated with this rebellion and executed. He was acting as executioner for a lot of these.
Really?
A lot of these beheadings.
Didn't have a
There
toy
were-
guillotine or anything.
Yeah.
There was like 800 people that were executed on the day, on the spot, and then hundreds year by year. Anybody who was even remotely associated with the family that had anything to do with it.
The
was
architect
killed.
who assured him the advice hole would never fit a whole girl through it.
Russians always do it the same way, don't they?
Yeah.
It's funny, exactly. They go to Europe, they see more freedom, they try and bring it to Russia, and it fucks up everything.
But Peter, everyone ever connected to anyone against me, kill him. Stalin, same. Putin,
Yeah.
same.
No, but this to me is
See, now we've
This is-
both the dictators in this podcast. We've
This
done
is
Xi
like-
Jinping and now we've done Putin.
this is very similar to me to perestroika, because he tried to give people more freedom when he came back, but it kind of
But also serfdom. Freedom for the right people, I suppose.
exactly. So 800 people who were associated with this rebellion executed. He sends away his wife to a monastery. So he doesn't even see her because he believes that she's associated with this thing. He sends her off to a monastery. He also sends off his sister to a monastery. But everybody else gets killed. But when he came back, basically the kind of reforms that he made is that he wanted people to have a better standard of education. He introduced loads of schools. And one of the things that he's really remembered for is that when he came back on the 25th of August, he set a rule forward that was like, you have to lose the beards, boys. Everybody who was in his court. And they were like, what do you mean? We've always had these beards. He was like, okay, you have until the 1st of September to fuck off with these beards.
And
I
now
ain't
these
having
wigs.
it. I ain't having it. So people were really angry because obviously they were really proud of these beards. They'd spent fucking
Lifetime
I'm
years
just
work.
growing
imagining
them.
these boyars crying as their wife just shaves them. It's like, he's taking the beard away, it's nonsense. He's got mad.
This is my favorite addition to the rule book that he made. So basically he decrees that to change New Year's Day to the 1st of January. Up until this point also, Russia was using a separate calendar from the rest of the world. He came back, he was like, we're doing it the way that they're doing it in Europe, and our New Year's Day is going to be on the 1st of January. And I've taken liberty to translate the direct quotation about him, what he said about the New Year's, because New Year's celebrations didn't exist the way that they do now. So basically he said...
I was just thinking, wow, she's gone through a lot of effort. Then I realised you speak Russian. I was like, oh, God.
I've gone to the effort of translating this from my mother tongue.
No, all I'm saying is that I try to translate it in a way that it's kind of meant, because there's a lot of stuff that gets lost in translation. Okay, in essence, he said, stop fucking with people's heads and make New Year's from the 1st of January. All this confusion really needs to fucking go. He said, as a sign of, a good start and fun start to the year, on the 1st of January, everybody is to congratulate each other with the new year, wish them good fortune with future endeavours, and good health to their children. Decorate with pine trees, entertain children, and sled down hills and mountains. And he said, and don't...
Regardless of snow or ice, I guess it's not really it's given in
You have
Russia.
images of this recently shaved weeping boy just tumbling down like shale.
The last one is fantastic. He says, and don't impede on adults' rights to be shit-faced and beat each other up. There are other days in the year to impede on their rights to do so.
He loves fighting. He's like, first, my New Year's celebration will be one big all-Russia fight.
Or the strongest Russians and some bears.
The people that survive the shale.
No wonder he was
Then fight.
The reason he got rid of the beards is because, look, guys, I'm about to pass a law that's going to make beard pulling a very real strap. So you want to get rid of them. Low-key, this is in a court level plays here. Lose the beards.
We're
They're
all
going to
on
be
the same
pulled. They're going to
team.
be pulled hard.
I also love it as like, on the New Year, everyone has like, may I offer my state-mandated good wishes to you?
Yeah, no, it was like he said the specific things that you have to wish each other. And the funny thing is that the exact phrasing that he used is still used on Christmas and New Year's cards now, like in Russia. Like
Does
that
it translate to roughly, I'm required to wish you well?
essentially.
No, seeing as Russia scored the lowest on like emotional expressionism on the entire planet, I assume so. Yeah.
I just find it amazing that there's a record of one person deciding that New Year's happens from now on, this is how we're doing it. Also, this is supposedly the point where alcohol was introduced to Russia. So this whole stereotype of Russians being drunks, apparently when he came back from Europe, there were wine sacks in squares and people were just invited to drink from them for free. He brought back tobacco and coffee, and so a lot of his critics were saying that not only has he ripped Russia away from its beautiful ancient traditions, but he's also brought loads of Western European dirt back to Russia and like set them back.
God, imagine living in Russia sober.
Sober, no
What is
cigarettes.
there to look at? Dirt.
I'm going to pull
Wheat,
your beard now.
Horses, tartars, big beards. No drink. Have to perceive and remember all.
I
Obviously,
am so very cold to my core. I swear I am not drunk. I the kind of thing where, like, do you reckon the first guy, when they brought back the wine, the guys drinking it were like, what is this magic substance? They saw this sister crawling through the advice hole. He was like,
yeah. So his wife and his sister are both in monasteries,
Yeah.
and around in 1703 he meets Catherine I, and she was basically his mistress for a really long time, and she fucking worked hard for that job. Apparently, because he used to get these twitches and used to get migraines, she would like massage his head, and if he fell asleep in her lap, would stay still for 3 hours,
Like a cat.
Like, how fucked up is that? Like, can you imagine having to stay still for someone and having no entertainment other than just sitting there? Because no phones.
She was there, a cup of coffee, cigarette.
drunk,
Yeah.
He eventually married her and legitimized some of their heirs. Essentially, from that point onwards, the Russian Empire starts mixing more with other European houses. Before then, it was primarily Russia was a Russian kind of dynasty. But, of course, this is a really interesting story about how Russia was modernized, but there is a twist, for this is actually the source of recent conspiracy theories, because the idea is that, so the evidence here is that when Peter left, he was a healthy 26-year-old
Yeah,
man.
and some other dude comes back. That's the
The
theory.
idea
it's
is
a
that
different
he's
guy.
been replaced because so he leaves a healthy 26-year-old man. He's tall, healthy, well built, with a beauty mark on his left cheek, which we know because of portraits that were made of him before he left. And he's got wavy hair. And he loved all Russian things. Like, he really loved dressing in Russian clothing. And when he came back, he was dressed in Western garb. The man who came back barely spoke any Russian, had straight hair, no beauty mark, was ill with a fever, and the tracks on his body would indicate that he'd already been treated for jungle fever, which was impossible because they weren't going that way when they were traveling to Europe. And he looked about 40 years old, the man that came back. Another interesting thing...
I'm assuming he wasn't away for 13 years.
He was gone for 2 years.
Okay.
He was gone for 2 years, and the man that came back was drastically different.
Surely his family would have done something. Like,
Of course they would have, which is why
they killed everyone off.
they killed everyone off who would have known
yeah.
that, and his sister, who would have been the person to recognise that Peter is not the same Peter that it was obviously sent away to a monastery where she was never allowed to speak to anyone again. He had a really good relationship with his first wife, and he didn't even see her when he came back. And obviously the theory there is that she was mixed up with the coup. But this theory is basically suggesting that the coup was because of the fact that Peter wasn't Peter.
So maybe we were joking about his toy army, being a real army. Maybe it is just a toy army, and he just got taken over. He was there just like, I've got real army with real cannons. Like, no, Peter, they're just toys. Kill the 27-year-old man.
And then took over,
like-
replaced it with their actual army. Went back and it was like, oh, it's old slaphead Peter with his wooden guns. And they're like, that's not Peter, and those are all real guns.
So, as I said, there were 20 guys that left to Europe. And 20 guys left with Peter, obviously. And the 20 that came back, only one of them was part of the original cast. And this new Peter as well.
So you're telling me
So this
CW got it.
got him. They recast everyone.
Everyone.
So, and this guy, Menshikov, was actually So after Peter died, his second wife Catherine took over Russia, and she ruled for about 2 years. And she ruled
Catherine
and
the First.
Catherine the First,
Yeah.
and
Catherine
she
the Second is Catherine the Great.
yes, and Catherine the First spent the majority of her ruling time basically throwing balls, having parties, eating loads of food, and she got really sick. But Menshikov was the one that was actually in charge. And he was the guy that left on that mission. He was the one that, when they came back, the 20 that came back with them, the majority of them were from Holland. There was...
Tour in Europe, like, guys, which of you could I most easily pass off as Russian?
I don't
Dutch?
speak much Russian at all, but I can say fuck you in Russian. You'll do.
Where
were you come from? I come from the Congo.
Obviously...
I've got the injections.
Obviously, that it is possible that he decided to wear Western clothing because he liked it. Of course that's possible. But how could his feet dramatically change size within those 2 years? His shoes no longer fit.
Birthmarks and age. I think
Yes.
the other...
And all of his friends.
Another really cool, interesting thing is that with Peter, the location of the Great Library of the Tsardom that was built by Ivan the Terrible was lost, because this was a secret that was passed to the Tsars when they would come to power. So when they come to power, they would be told, this is where the Great Library is, this is where all the great Russian texts are. And the only two people that knew about it, because the brother that he was ruling with had died, was his sister and him. And for a long time, he was apparently torturing his sister for information. I mean, allegedly in the text they're saying that the reason that he was torturing her is because he was trying to find out what the fuck this coup was about and who was involved. But there is evidence that there were excavations after the fact of the grounds, because he was trying to find this fucking library. Another thing that this Peter did is that he copied a lot of the texts that were the Russian texts that were written down by the monks. These texts were copied out and the original manuscripts were destroyed. Why? He also had loads of mistresses, whereas before, the original Peter, when he would go to bed, even if his wife wasn't
Just
with
had a
him,
nightlight on, played with his toys.
he had the nightlight on, and he had soldiers outside his door, max. This time around, he had mistresses going in and out
all
the
of them
door.
were called Max.
Yeah, because maximum firepower. He's a child.
And then around the same time, and this is maybe a more farcical part of the story, but historically there is a man, there is a figure called, he's an unidentified prisoner, and he's called the Man in the Iron Mask, and he was held in the Bastille and moved prison to prison essentially after that, and he was captured in 1669. Nobody actually knows who it was. The theory is that this person was an illegitimate sibling of Louis XIV, but this man was clearly of noble birth. His name was never written down, but he was treated with respect, and it matches up with the years, because Peter left in 1667 and this person was captured in 1669. Basically, there's another theory that maybe I'll go into in another episode about how Alexander Dumas, who wrote
Three Musketeers.
Three Musketeers and Count of Monte Cristo, who also wrote The Man in the Iron Mask, is actually Pushkin. Pushkin was a Russian author. He basically died in a duel around the time that Alexander Dumas came to prominence, and he was known to be a spy for Nicholas I, and because of that connection, people believe that he would have known about the whole situation about fake Peter, and he tried to show that in his retelling of The Man in the Iron Mask. So if you're interested in that, please look up Alexander Dumas is Pushkin. And that is my story for today, boys. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for its length.
I mean, I just feel like...
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Well, I haven't experienced it. I feel like my today in history isn't going to be as good.
Yeah, that's how I kind of feel at the moment.
I was really excited.
And I'm next. You know what I mean? Like you at least get me to kind of flounder, and then was that was bad. And then you come and go, well, it wasn't quite as bad. It wasn't the opening act. Whereas I've got to follow that. You know.
Did you like the story? I think it's fantastic.
Beyonce
I was so
was really
excited.
We were there going like, we like Peter. Then you're like, well, Peter isn't Peter. And you're like, wow,
There was a whole
The highs and the lows.
Yeah. I mean,
That's really
what I feel like now is I feel like I'm on X Factor auditions, but Beyonce went before me just for some fun, and I'm there clutching my kazoo and looking like awkwardly. Not even X Factor, like Britain's Got
Wait,
Talent.
I was going to say, why would you have a kazoo? Who the fuck? Who let
I would like to sing to you through my kazoo. And then they're like, go away.
You can be near, far, wherever you are.
Me crying. So I guess I'm up next after that. Well,
Yeah, follow that. Did anyone in your story get... I don't know. I'm just interested how he got arrested in France. Sorry, fuck your story. I'm going to keep talking about this one.
You go ahead. I'm going to just cry to myself.
Do you reckon it's a case that did he piss off the King of France? It was like, I'm going to put that Russian in prison. Don't worry, I'll do your swapsy.
The thing is, this guy who came back from the 20 Good Men, he actually came from a really poor family. He was like proper Littlefinger type of guy. He was selling like dumplings on the street, and then one of
Pierogi?
like he was pirashki. He was selling pirashki on the street, and then one of Peter's friends like brought him into the castle because he liked his like he was like, oh, you got good chat, come in, like come, and he became one of Peter's best friends. He was a slimy little fucker, and then basically got arrested like when Catherine I's reign was over, and Menshikov tried to do a coup and basically be like, I want to be Tsar, and everyone was like, fuck off you are. They stripped him of his enormous wealth. He came from shit, and he like made himself such an incredible life. Eventually was arrested and murdered, of course, as all men should be who, you know, take advantage of the system.
Leave it at that. We'll appeal to the feminists.
But yeah, no, there's definitely reasons to believe that this is a legitimate theory. Mm-hmm. But a lot of Russian people really don't like the theory because they really don't like the idea that we are looking back at Russian history and trying to shit on some of the greatest figures in it. But then Peter the Great, even if he wasn't an imposter, is not a lovely figure, because although he brought modernity to Russia, he also brought slavery to Russia.
And no beards.
And beards are fabulous.
I mean, I'd do that because I struggle in the facial hair department. I'd absolutely pass that door. I'd see one big bushy Gandalf, and I'd be like, never again. Not in my sight.
So your story, James.
My story is about the big boom.
The big boom.
A big boom. So my story.
The origin of the universe started today.
It did. Universe
10th of March, yeah.
Yeah. It was the beginning of time, the 10th of March.
No one can work out whether they go for the 1st of January. Apparently Pete hadn't given them the good news.
Yeah. So my story happened in 1906 on the 10th of March. Mm-hmm. And it is about Europe's worst mining accident.
Oh.
But you didn't see that one coming. I bet you could hear the Roma Invicta and all that, but no. So, Europe's worst mining accident, which is the second biggest mining accident in history. As you said earlier in the podcast, the Chinese had to be it, didn't they? So, the biggest one is the Chinese one, yeah. So,
you can have that, China. You can have worst mining accident.
So essentially, it's in somewhere which is the Courrières Colliery, which is in the Pas-du-Calais mountains, and this is a huge mining complex. So there was these tunnels went into several towns in the area. So no, it wasn't just one town's livelihood. This entire mine complex was several towns' livelihoods. There was several different shafts down into the complex. The entire thing was incredibly complicated. About 2,000 men and boys worked the mines, and they were all mining for coal. And this coal was usually manufactured into gas. So it was, again, 1906, you're beginning to see that kind of the fossil fuel era. So it was a big coal mine. About 3 p.m, a fire began on the 9th of March. And this fire happened about 270 metres underground. But no one knows what started the fire.
It was always burning since the world
I was going to say, was Billy Joel there?
Billy Joel did not. Maybe he did. We don't know.
No.
That blood's on your hands. Billy Joel, that blood's on your hands.
No, he didn't. He definitely stated that he didn't start.
Well, why does he
he
feel
would.
so keen? Yeah,
He
why
would
does
have
he
been
feel so
killed,
keen?
nearly.
Yeah.
How many people died?
1,099.
Wow.
So a load of people died. It started. So a fire started in something called the Cecil Pit, which is just one of the many areas, and they couldn't stop the fire. So what they did is they decided to close the pit off.
Were they putting it out with gasoline?
No, they were not. They were not doing that. They decided to close the area off to the rest of the mine and let the fire burn out, because obviously deprive it of oxygen, burns itself out. Spoiler alert, the fire doesn't burn itself out. So in the following morning, 10th of March...
You mean these 1,099 people didn't just die from trips and so on?
No, it wasn't just several... There was a guy outside...
There was no sign for a fire exit. That was the problem.
That was absolutely the problem, because the next morning, with 1,795 men in the mine, so almost the full workforce, the entire thing exploded. So and what happened was...
Wait. So there was a fire. They thought it's going to go out by itself. It doesn't, and they'll just go back to work.
Yeah, and it blows up.
Well, they probably didn't know that it didn't go out, because obviously they closed it off.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good.
And it started from the Cecil Pit. So essentially, fissures in the pit walls had allowed flammable gases to come in, but were then sparked by the smouldering fire. And it was 7 a.m. when so big was the explosion that debris actually fired out of the mine shafts.
Oh my god!
Like
wow.
the equipment the pulley systems to get the element were destroyed. One of the mining kind of like buildings, the roof was blown off of it by the scale of this explosion, because what happened was the coal dust ignited. Because people don't realise, a lot of people don't realise that coal dust is incredibly flammable.
Yeah, it stands to coal's flammable, so it stands to reason you take
what
the
happens
dust.
is because the dust is, you've got so much more surface area to work with, it will just ignite and explode.
It's like even flour in that kind of state is flammable and explosive.
When you're storing coal, the coal storage is least dangerous when it's full. The less coal there is in there, the more coal dust, the more explosive that area is. So the roof mine office was blown. The roof of the mine office was blown off. Fires raged from every opening of the mine, so many people suffered like terrible burns. Rescuers and family members of the mines were unable to send down help because the fires were obviously pouring out of the mine shafts. One rescue party of 40 men died trying to help people. As they went down, the shaft collapsed around them. French soldiers were called in because there were so many bodies actually found in a mortuary.
That sounds awful.
Near the mines. So it was pretty bad. But what's interesting is people started to actually blame the company for it.
It must have been devastating for that town. Like
Towns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like whole populations of men dead.
Just the whole.
Just because I was thinking the industry, the economy.
You cutthroat, cold-blooded capitalist.
Sorry, I was just thinking of it until I put the money.
My margins, good lord.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, yes, all those dead people as well.
So no one to this day, no one actually knows.
All those life insurance payments.
Because the problem is that pretty much everyone died. So it's very, very difficult to work out what actually started the fire in the first place. There have been two kind of hypotheses.
One of them, Billy Joel, covered.
Yeah, Billy Joel beats an alibi, so we can't go from right now. So the two ones we're going to have to
Was
work
his alibi not being born at the time?
Yeah, but that's
Sneaky
ridiculous.
Billy Joel. No, so the first one is that an accident with the handling of mine explosives, because obviously these mines would be TNT blast cleared. And the other one is that ignition of methane by a naked flame of a miner's lamp, because obviously this is an era when they were all using fire,
Candles,
candles and things down those mines. So there's favours for both, because there was blasting done in the area as they were attempting to widen that particular area where the fire started, and obviously the other evidence is that workers use mines with workers in the mines use naked flames.
So they didn't.
All the time.
It might not even have been a flame, because I don't know if it was the case in France, but saying in a lot of English coal faces, because miners had to pay for their own candles. So what they would do is, and obviously this was before TNT blasting, where you mined by driving into the coal face. And so what they would do is, to drive the spike, you had usually a boy holding it, and two blokes with sledgehammers, and they would use the least amount of candle possible. They would light the candle to line up the spike, and then they would blow it out, and they would know what they were doing by the sparks of the sledgehammers hitting the spike. Which meant that sometimes Welsh boys got fucking cracked in the side of their head.
I was going to say, just like, okay, line it up and... Ow!
Oh, he's a cripple.
Billy's done it again.
Billy's done it. How about we just light the candle the whole time we're working? It's like, it was this decision that blew up the French mine. So the thing is, the scale of the disaster was unheard of at the time. So there weren't actually
I can't imagine
there weren't
something
enough
terrible
French
like that
mine
happening.
rescuers in the country to help.
Jesus.
Essentially, they were completely understaffed. Then, to make it worse, because they were still trapped down in this mine for days, a unseasonal snowstorm hit. So, just completely, really, they didn't want people to survive.
Fire below, ice above.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
really.
Really, God was real angry.
But the thing is,
Keep the candle lit.
so bearing in mind that the explosion happened on March 10th, by April the 1st, only 194 bodies had been recovered from the mine.
Oh my God.
So this is how slow progress has been. So
It's still happening.
Yes,
Well, it's the recovery effort.
the recovery of it.
To this day, they're still getting bodies out.
That's how slow it has been.
So
Macron's dragging his feet about it.
he is. That's what the Yellow Jackets are really upset with. They're like, free those damn miners. And they're like, well, they've got a delicate ecosystem down there now. We don't want to disturb it.
They're like the Wombles.
French translation.
So I just imagine
Wombles
just
of
be like,
Wimbledon.
that massive mine disaster? Yeah, it gives me an idea for a children's show. Right. Hear me out.
It's
we'll
about
change enough.
recycling.
We'll call it the Wombles.
Said in Wimbledon. They're not French.
And now I'm just imagining this mining disaster happening to the Wombles universe. Like burnt
Uncle
bodies with
Bulgaria!
wombles coming out from the mine shaft.
Dragging out Uncle Bulgaria.
Yeah, like just all the women folk alone in the house, just the ticking of the clock in the background, like no one's coming home, are they? Like, but so people actually started blaming the company. People actually started blaming the company because they essentially thought that they were deliberately delaying opening blocked shafts to prevent a coalface fire, so they could save the coal. Because obviously this explosion's happened, there was fires, they were starving it of oxygen because the coal itself would ignite. So people started accusing the company of
Trying to save
their money and save as much coal as possible. And the mine was unusually complex. It was really, really complicated, with different pit heads being interconnected by underground galleries on many levels.
Was it one of the biggest mines of its kind at the time, right?
And what's crazy is this complexity was actually supposed to help rescuers. It was supposed to help and allow more rescue
Because they're more
points.
entry points.
More entry points. But let's not lie, it obviously helped get coal up quicker as well.
Yeah.
The more exits. So let's not be like purely, grateful to our capitalist overlords for they're holes to help you with money. But this complexity actually is the reason for so much loss of life, because everything was so interconnected that when the coal dust detonated, it obviously just ripped through these galleries and these interconnected tunnels and these shafts and just detonated everything. So, can you guys guess how many miles of tunnels do you think exploded?
20.
50.
200.
Okay, so it was 70. 70
Okay.
miles.
I think Val wins.
That wins it. 70 miles, so 100 or 110 kilometres for
French and
French
other such
and
people.
other such people who used that.
No, going extremely large wasn't the best bet for that guess.
No, it wasn't. 2 billion thousand. All in all, the death toll added up to, should I say, some people argue 160, but the official death toll is at 199 people. So about 700 odd managed to escape. Most of them with third-degree burns and things who were near the surface at the time. And there was a group of 40 survivors that found they'd been down there for most of the time, and they'd eaten they'd eaten their packed lunches while they were down there, and they also ate one of the mine horses to survive because they were down there for
At
that.
least didn't eat each other.
I think you led with the packed lunches, and a horse. There we go.
No, but I just like the idea of these people, these French miners being trapped and being like, "Oh, we're trapped. What are we going to do?" And someone's just like, "Pack lunches."
Someone just whips out
No, but the thing is, it's slightly grimmer than that, because you have to remember they were probably eating the packed lunches of the dead.
Yeah.
Things their wives and
I was also
family had
thinking-
packed for them.
I was also
As they
thinking
went
rationing. I was thinking rationing, because obviously you've got a packed lunch, you're there right. So I've got my pack of Cheetos, and I've got
I've got my meal deal.
and I've got cheese string. This cheese string needs to last me. You just pull one strand off.
Yeah, so you come along and one, you get those cheese strings with the 4 different cheeses, one whole quarter's missing. You're like, which one are you bastards? Take all my cheese string. You open up the Baby Bell and it's gone. They put the wax back in. You're like, you motherfucker.
It's just a stone wrapped in the Baby Bell. I mean, pretty much the same flavour.
Same flavour. No, it tastes
Baby Bell doesn't
stone
taste like anything.
Stone tastes less like feet than Baby Bell does. I say that like I'm a notorious eater of feet. I'll just put it out there. Whatever. I didn't say I didn't like it. But essentially, they ate these packed lunches, which of all their dead friends, and then ate a horse, which is crazy. I think that, imagine you're in this mine, this huge explosion goes off, all rubble everywhere, people dead, dying.
Plenty of cook Frenchmen.
Yeah, horse just walks past you. You're like,
I'm sure the horse died.
No, I imagine it was trying to sneak past.
yeah, just like, no, the horse knows the way out.
The
was a
horse
pack
probably
horse.
died too.
The horse, obviously the horse died. They did eat it, but I like
No,
the
but
idea.
before,
Yeah.
in the explosion.
No, well, because they'd eaten about 40 days worth of packed lunches. That'd have been rancid.
That's true.
Yeah, so the horse is probably alive and they slaughtered it and ate it. Which I like to believe, just the idea that you'd be like, everyone's dead, what's going on? And then just seeing a horse walk past would be really bizarre. Feeling like, is that one of the horses? Just didn't get me. I know it was coming. I ducked. The one in China was about 1,400 though, so they just eked it. Tragic mine.
Yeah. But this was really interesting. I would have never learned about this on my own.
But the thing is, I was actually doing some reading about coal dust ignitions and things. The fact that that it's so fine that with coal dust it will actually detonate not just off of naked flame. It will detonate off heated surfaces.
What?
Yeah, it will detonate off heated surfaces.
Wow.
So there's actually a whole thing in, say, European technology companies, which are all about stopping that happening. Yeah, which is essentially, because you get on, say, a hot lamp, like bulb, bang, and then obviously because the detonation occurs and the fine powder will just fill up a coal mine, unsurprisingly, and just explode all the way down it. So yeah, that's the French mining disaster.
Must have been devastating, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Used to happen to the French.
Yep. But then you know what also happened that was pretty devastating to France? World War One, a couple of years later. So roll the punches, France.
Yeah. Poor France.
Wasn't a good time.
20th century was just not for them.
Not kind. Not the first half of it.
Yeah. So, Jonah, well, you indulged us with a story of 1969.
So I wanted to the one I wanted to share. It didn't technically happen today, but I was brought to it by things that did happen today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
Because not only was his alleged assassin, James L. Ray, born on the 10th of March, I believe in 1926, but on the 10th of March 1969 he pleaded guilty in the Memphis court.
Full circle.
Happy birthday to me. I am guilty.
But the reason I say alleged is because he later attempted to recant his confession and obtain a trial by jury. Essentially, he confessed, where he pled guilty, and then he later tried to take that back so he could have his trial by jury. And he wasn't allowed. He died in prison in 1998.
What would be his reason for...
Well, this is it.
Maybe he just wasn't enjoying prison.
Like all good American...
No.
No. He tried...
He was just there like, can I change my mind? I'm not guilty.
There are two reasons why that's not the case. I mean, first, he tried to recant his guilty plea before he went to prison, and he would have known what prison was like because he spent a lot of his life in and out of penitentiaries. Because he came from a very poor background. I think he was dishonorably discharged from the army, and then spent a lot of time in and out of jail. He was actually escaped from prison, technically, I think, when he was alleged to have shot Dr. Martin Luther King. But I say alleged because, like all good American assassinations, there is a conspiracy around the death of Martin Luther King.
Does it lead back to Lyndon B. Johnson by any chance?
Everything
does.
This is just history conspiracy combos.
To be fair, people just blame the mine company. I'm just saying. That's pretty standard. Like,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Like
The horses were in on it.
the horses knew.
there is a piracy con around the death of Martin Luther King Jr. So the official version, as determined by the FBI, is that James L. Ray shot Martin Luther King with a Remington hunting rifle while Martin Luther King stood in the balcony of the Mulberry Motel in Memphis. But there are a number of suspect details. So James L. Ray himself claims that when he left prison in 1959, he became a gun runner whose handler went by the nickname Raoul. So essentially he claimed that he was working for some covert element of the United States government. And then there are all kinds of things with the investigation. So like I said, the case was investigated by the FBI, which was then being run by the wonderful and lovely human being that is J. Edgar Hoover.
Brilliant.
Which had been for years harassing Martin Luther King. On the one hand, they tried to pin him to communism, to which Martin Luther King's response was quite lovely, I think, because he said, there are as many communists in the civil rights movement as there are Eskimos in Florida. The other was a bit more below the belt, because they tried to pin him to all kinds of acts of sexual perversion. So they accused him of hiring prostitutes, of taking drugs, of being gay, and doing all these kind of things.
J. Edgar Hoover was accusing people of being gay.
I was going to say the supreme irony of J. Edgar Hoover going after anyone for what at the time were considered acts of perversion.
I feel like it's just him saying, like, we should get him on a gay thing. And it's like, why is that always your go-to, Hoover?
Sorry.
Like, he's like, I'm just saying, it'd be really embarrassing if someone was to find out.
Sorry about J. Edgar Hoover is a famous covert transvestite and homosexual.
Oh.
Yeah.
And head of the FBI.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You would know him from Man in the High Castle.
I would... I thought you were going to say you would know him from season 1 of Drag Race. He competed and won.
Looks like I'm here to hoover up the awards.
Oh.
So anyway,
Wow, I didn't know that. How did I not know that? That's crazy.
But yeah, so the federal body that had been harassing Martin Luther King was charged with investigating his murder, and then the handling of the case was quite dodgy. So one seemingly minor thing was that when Martin Luther King was shot, a chap called Solomon Kane, who was his driver while he was in Memphis, ran out onto the street after he heard the shots, and he said he saw a hooded figure with his back to him in some bushes across the road from where Martin Luther King was shot. Obviously, the official version is that he was shot from a boarding house room rented by James L. Ray across the street. He related this to a policeman on the night in his given statement. The next day, public works employees of the Memphis employed by the Memphis town government removed those bushes and destroyed the crime scene.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The next dodgy thing is to do with the rifle and the bullet in question. So James O'Rourke claims that Raoul told him to buy the gun and rent the room.
Mm-hmm.
The gun was found after the fact, not far from the room, with James O'Rourke's fingerprints all over it. So pretty much left at the scene.
Yeah.
And then several years down, I think in the 80s, because James O'Rourke managed to get an unofficial television trial in which he was found not guilty. Because essentially dressed up and the jury found him not guilty on television, but obviously it didn't matter because it was TV. But after that, they ran ballistics tests, and with the rifle that he was alleged to have used, and not one of the bullets could be made to match the kill shot that was taken out of Martin Luther King's body.
Pretty sus.
But the best thing is, unlike other piracy cons, which are...
We're desperately trying to avoid the C word because it gets you demonetized. Not that we're monetized now, considering
But we
have
would
20
like to be,
subscribers.
and we would like to keep our content the same. Unlike other piracy cons, which go largely theoretical, this one actually had its day in civil court. And a mixed-race jury found that the United States government colluded with the mafia to have Martin Luther King killed.
I did not know that.
I didn't know any of that. No.
Yeah, so several members. And this case was brought by his widow, and several members of Martin Luther King's family actually protested James O'Rourke's innocence. In fact, the year before he died, I think one of Martin Luther King's sons visited him. And pretty much said, as weird as this is, I don't blame you, and I'm sorry that you're here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, one of the things I think is quite nice is that the judge and I believe the family asked that the jury only award them a settlement of $100 because it wasn't about the money. But the original case was in like $10 million civil suit against the United States government.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, the civil court says it was conspiracy. The FBI says it was James L. Ray, and then I think the Supreme Court sides with the FBI.
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. But it's a short one. But that's just because obviously, like, James L. Ray's birthday is today, and his guilty plea was entered today.
I don't know what he looks like. Was he a white man?
White man, yeah.
In and out of jail.
Yeah.
Right.
He had been in the army, had discharged.
No, I don't know what he looks like. White man in and out of jail. Oh, perfect. I have the description in my head.
He's got an eye patch, is missing some teeth, he's wearing a stripy jumpsuit.
No, I just
I'm thinking
I didn't
of
want
the
to say. I
Hamburglar.
didn't want to say like white, like lower class.
Oh no, I think if you were being unkind to a man, you would probably call him white trash. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's.
But I was thinking more like hair colour, other ways of defining someone's features.
White in and out of prison. What's wrong with that?
yeah.
No. Hamburglar.
This
Right
has turned into quite the piracy
deep,
con.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry, boys and girls.
This
Saul's
is
here.
really amazing.
Did you know that ice gems were invented today? Crunch.
It's basically what it's like.
I think they're actually little bits of polar bear poop, and that's why they were getting extinct, crapping themselves to death for ice gems.
Well, no, not that. But
I like up and out there. That's my piracy con for the day.
But 10th of March, 1997, Buffy the Vampire Slayer first aired.
I said so. I said so. Do you remember?
What?
When
you were saying who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, I said who cares? I don't know anything about Buffy. And someone was like, "Whoa, James! Don't tell us what you're reading." I just went, "Are you doing Buffy?" Because I'm not.
But just really funny was the fact that obviously, like, it was literally like just after we had the conversation, I put forth 1997. I had like sealed Buffy in like 5 minutes after we discussed it.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
So obviously director Joss Whedon, who has done other work
Like
Firefly.
Alien Resurrection.
And Firefly.
I was thinking more like Serenity and Firefly
Alien Resurrection.
and Avengers.
Up to a point.
Just want the world to know.
Yes.
Joss Whedon wrote Alien Resurrection.
He also wrote Angel.
Just want people to know that because it's bad.
Yeah, but one thing that was great was that because I basically was looking up. I felt like like a 14-year-old girl. I was looking up basically like fun Buffy facts.
Is it super duper cool? Is that one?
Did anyone watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
I didn't watch Buffy. I was a
no one
charmed
watch it?
person.
Oh, I watched Buffy. Buffy fact number 1.
There's vampires in it.
Well, actually, that is one of the facts. Yes, but no, not on
Not
that
on the
entirely.
ones you're listing.
No. But why they are like the way that they are in the show. Because basically, the whole that a lot of the depictions of vampires are basically very, very normal but sharp, pointy teeth. But obviously, in Buffy, they have like the weird, ugly faces when they want to feed. The reason why Joss Whedon did that was the fact that he didn't think that a skinny blonde woman stabbing people in the heart was good for TV unless they looked like monsters. Basically, he was like, let's make sure that they do actually look evil, and she's not just stabbing random dudes.
She's just a psychopath. Like the final episode reveals she was in a hospital this whole time hallucinating.
But like, so,
I actually have a fact
about Buffy.
I do actually know. It's not about Buffy. It's about Sarah Michelle Gelligan.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Michelle Gelligan. Right, Michelle Gelligan, right? She met her husband on the set of the live-action Scooby-Doo film, where she played Daphne, and her husband Freddie Prinze Jr. played Fred. That's where they met. That film. Wait, deeper down the hole, was written by James Gunn. That's it.
That's your Buffy the Vampire Slayer fact. Yeah, but what I was going to say about Sarah Michelle Gellar was the fact that she was actually up for the lead in Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but she ended up accepting Buffy over it, which is obviously.
Isn't Sabrina being rebooted?
Yeah, Sabrina got rebooted, and Sabrina already got rebooted last Halloween. It was really badly reviewed, and Charmed was rebooted as well by Warner Brothers.
Only you
Because
care
it
about
was
Charmed.
Melissa.
It got-
Same era. It's really weird that time in the 90s, right? 90s, yeah. 90s was like
1997.
they were like, let's do witch shit. Like, and it's not just TV shows, it's also films. Like when you think about like early 2000 films, there's loads of like supernatural stuff. Why is it not now? I love that stuff.
Well,
But
it's just because it took that long for them to get over the whole Salem witch trials thing.
But it's really, really funny because actually in my head when I'm trying to think of like the actress, when I'm trying to think of the actress for Sabrina, I always think of Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I'm just like, I don't know why, but like completely different actress because it's Melissa.
Parallelogram.
Melissa
Parallelogram.
Melissa Joan Hart. And the thing is, like, I often get them confused, which is funny because obviously
Saul from,
they
like,
were interchangeable almost at one
I was
stage.
going to say, Saul. Is it like that bear thing where people remember the bear spelling differently?
Yeah.
But
the Bernstein Bear thing. The
Is it like
Mandela
that?
effect.
Yeah. Is Saul from like the alternate timeline where the roles got swapped?
Yeah.
Well, no, because even better, there was another role swap in Buffy because Sarah Michelle Gellar was actually going up for the role of Cordelia, the bitchy girlfriend of Xander at one stage. And what's funny was the fact that the actress that played Cordelia, Chris McCarpenter, was
Diana
actually
Cartwright.
auditioning for Buffy, and they were forced to swap.
Oh
And
my god, what a piss take. Can you imagine? You're coming in to audition for like the really big part, and then there's this little bitch who's auditioning to take the part of like someone's girlfriend, and she just takes your big part, and they're like, yeah, you're alright playing the girlfriend part.
It's going, you're not bitchy enough.
Well, no,
You, too bitchy. Swap.
well, no, because that's the thing. Actually, the Chris McCarpenter, who played Cordelia, in a previous movie had played a bitchy character, and she when she was told about, we want you to swap roles, she was like speaking with her agent, being like, I don't want to be doing this role. I don't want to play another bitchy character. I don't want to be locked into just playing bitchy characters. Where basically her agent said, no one knows who you are. They won't put you into this pigeonhole because, as I said, no one knows you. You've done one other role, so she ended up accepting.
Was that good for her career in the long run?
Accepted by
I've
heard of her?
No, never again. But also, I mentioned Xander before, who's the kind of like kooky, nerdy friend. Originally was going to be Ryan Reynolds, but he almost accepted the role, but no, he ended up turning it down. But he always went for it, which would have been very weird. Ryan Reynolds playing the nerd.
Well, he went on to play Pikachu. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, Nicholas Brendan, who plays Xander, basically, there's a point in Buffy because he was like he wasn't like really fit and healthy. He was just like standard frame, and he played the nerdy guy. And he actually ended up going on diets and going to the gym, basically getting fit. Where the producers basically said like, no, no, you need to ease up a bit.
Hey, stop that!
Yeah,
You're
swelling.
looking too jockey.
He's swelling.
No. You're going to be the nerd. Yeah,
Hey.
you? It's a bit weird. It's like, can you stop working out because you're looking too fit?
Warcraft subscription right now. Don't leave.
Yeah, well, basically.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, get back to it.
Because obviously, when you think about like Guardians of the Galaxy and Chris Pratt, when Chris Pratt went for the role of Star-Lord, he was incredibly out of shape. And the thing is, this is like if you think of like Parks and Recreation season 1, he looked like that. He was, he was tubby.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't remember who was the guy who spoke to him, but basically said like, look, you're a really nice guy. I really like the way that you act, but you do not have the body of Star-Lord. Where basically, Chris Pratt made it his mission to get in shape, and he basically focused so hard to just absolutely just shed and gain muscle. And he went because basically they accepted him. They accepted him for the role. They're like, look, you can be Star-Lord, but you need to gain the weight. Can you do that? And he was like, yes, and he did it. And I think he had something like 6 months to do it.
Well, there's another example of an actor being forced to do that when they made the Twilight film that didn't have any like budget, and the guy that they hired for Jacob's part,
Taylor
Lautner, he was just a boy. He wasn't like in fantastic shape, and then basically Twilight was a massive hit, and they were going to recast him. Like this was like the biggest role this guy has had, and they were going to recast him, and he had to like turn his body around and get like really swole to the point where like they could show him topless for the majority of the second and like consecutive films.
I would love for the whole werewolf thing to be like, turning from the beast back into a human and they're just slightly pudgy.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
And just walk off. But,
Yeah, who decided werewolves are
have to be
muscular?
buff when they're human? Like, can you imagine just seeing this werewolf, like hulking, muscle-bound beast, turning back into just a little old lady, and she just puts her bra back on? It's like, oh, off I go.
Why did you have to mention that bit?
Well, you think she's ready? What, you think a werewolf can have bra on when it's running around in the woods? No.
It
Think
gets
smart.
trapped on things. So
Yeah, it's cool.
Now-
Spike stab us with silver lining.
My last little quick fact.
About Buffy.
Well, it's not really a quick fact. It's actually just more of a story about Joss Whedon. But it's the fact that
He wrote Alien Resurrection.
yes, he wrote Alien Resurrection. But one thing that he did write in Buffy that was actually good was the Gentleman episode, which if anyone has actually watched Buffy will know is the episode shot basically in complete silence because there are these monsters that basically take sound away because their weakness is a scream. And the whole thing is that they're these figures in suits, kind of like creepy, like old men faces, like just gliding past windows. And Joss Whedon had a nightmare, essentially woke up and came up with the script, and he wanted it to be without sound because he thought it would be challenging for him to write. But I guess it's slightly easier because obviously you don't have words, So Joss Whedon, step up your game.
It's gonna be really
write
hard.
the sequel to Alien Resurrection. No,
No, you don't. You're not.
no. I'm just taking the piss. The fact that obviously, it must be challenging to write a story that is compelling. But I mean, for me, I think it was actually the best Buffy episode was the Gentleman episode
Well,
because
the
it's
thing
actually generally scary.
Well, I would imagine that would be really difficult because you don't have to write any dialogue, and sometimes by writing dialogue, you are able to rely on actors' ability to play off one another to deliver it in a compelling, interesting way. And then when you're on set, you can direct in a particular way. If you're writing a script for an episode and there is no words in it, you have to describe the scenes like pretty.
Well, the thing I've always found is it's why I don't
solidly.
write scripts. You know what I mean? Because like with a novel, it's like you sit there and you describe every little kind of thing and how you picture it. But with scripts, you're relying on someone else to bring your idea to life.
Yeah.
You're going, actor, please do this in the way I want. And obviously that's when you get Kubrick being like Gollum with the ring 1,000 times because he's got a clear idea in his head. But obviously with a book, you're not relying on anyone. You just go blah 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 blah.
Like Michael Jackson with his piano.
Yeah, simmer.
Just
No.
let him.
Have you seen that, by the way? Just for the audience here, it's in the, I can't remember what the documentary called, but it's this documentary. I think it's like, I don't know, Live and Let Live, or I Got Away with It Again, tee something like that. It's a documentary about him going on like his big tour, and it's him and all the behind the scenes of how he came up with his new album. And there's this whole montage scene where he's got this guy on the piano, and this guy's like playing the piano. He's like, "Gotta let it simmer, Tony," and he's like, "Okay, Mr. Jackson," and he's like, "Go again." He's like, dun 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 dun. He's like, gotta let it simmer, and he's just like, I don't know what you mean. You can see him. He's like, okay, and he's like, okay, go. And he's like, dun 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 dun. He's like, gotta let it simmer. It's literally like without the chair throwing scene, like from Whiplash.
From Whiplash,
You know,
yeah.
like, just without the chair being knobbed, he's going, gotta let it simmer, and he's just there like, and you can see he's getting increasingly frustrated. But he's like,
Especially being on camera.
Yeah, he's
Michael
like,
Jackson
let it
telling you
simmer.
you're fucking up. Like, that's probably
Yeah.
not a good feeling.
and yeah.
One thing I was going to say was, like, you were mentioning about why does the werewolf always have to be the buff dude? Buffy the Vampire Slayer did that first because Seth Green was a werewolf.
Seth Green.
Okay,
is a
when I
werewolf.
meant that, I didn't mean Seth Green. You're not allowed.
Seth Green was the werewolf in it.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is I just want it to be like a 50-year-old man.
And now look at him.
Yeah, you can see just the beginning of his grey pubes at the top of his, he's putting on his jeans. He's like, whoa, that was a bit. But when he's a wolf, he's like,
Oh, that was a bit what?
that was a big one.
Oh, that was a big werewolf, Dave.
You're saying there's
What are you going to say?
Small werewolf.
You have a little arf. And then a little, just kind of, when
No, I wish
you're
I-
in traffic, you beep the horn, you go, ow! Quickly, and then you're like, oh, keep that under control. And then you have like the full, like, I've eaten my wife again.
What about the werewolf?
Again.
What about
spit her back out.
what about the werewolves in What We Do in the Shadows? They weren't all fit. The
No,
swearwolves.
the swearwolves. Yeah, they were just like blokes, you know.
What We Do in the Shadows is a fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, please do yourself a favour and watch it.
Written and directed by the guy who did Thor Ragnarok.
Oh.
Like the combo.
Okay, baby boys.
And that's
that was
today in
the
history.
Which leads us
Wait,
on...
can we all say it at the same time?
Okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Today in history.
Jonah, you just fucking let everyone down every time, don't you?
I make myself feel good.
Well, now we're on to... I can't really call it Google reviews anymore because I've long
not-
since stopped
it's not
using
Google.
Google reviews. So
Internet
I'm
opinions?
going to call it public forum.
How wonderfully bland sounding.
Oh no, it should just be called Who Let Them Near a Keyboard.
Yes.
Boom.
There we go. Who Let Them Near a Keyboard. So, introducing the first episode of Who Let Them Near a Keyboard. Who Let Them Near a Keyboard is a game in which I give my 3 colleagues reviews from the internet, and it's their job to decipher what the review is referencing. In today's episode, I have picked films. So I've gone onto IMDb and I have looked up films. Some great, some brilliant.
Did you have difficulty looking up films on the film database?
Is that your range from great to brilliant?
No. Some great, some brilliant, some terrible. The point is that you have to decipher what the review this person has left, what film it's for. Of course, I'll be giving you 3 options. We'll be going around the group, and you can all pick more than one answer. So, this is the first review. As a big fan of mafia-type movies, I found the actor's performance exceptionally well done and entertaining. Not a big fan of his work after his other films, but blame that on the action movie genre that he was too often typecast in. Total redemption is this character. Loved his portrayal, extraordinary makeup, accurately portrayed, writers and cast did their research, thoroughly enjoyed the movie.
No.
Oh.
10 out of 10.
Okay, wait.
Okay,
What are
okay.
the movies,
The
James?
options
Okay.
are The Godfather Part 3, Casino, and Gotti.
Gotti, it's gotta be Gotti.
I agree with everyone else. Yeah.
So all
It
3
has
of you
to be
say
Gotti. That has to be the most sarcastic review. If it's not Gotti, James.
What action films was Travolta in?
Face Off.
Is that an action film?
It's a film.
Grease Lightning. You know when he runs down that little kid. and
Right,
just drives off at the
Swordfish?
end?
I don't really think of him as an action star. Maybe because now he's fat.
Hey guys, come on,
Films has De Niro
Hairspray.
been in.
He like burns that girl's eyes off.
The action film of Hairspray.
I was relying that none of you had seen Hairspray because I hadn't seen it, but I hope there's a scene where he just goes,
Eh,
"Fuck you, Mary!" right in her face. Anyway, so the correct answer is Gotti.
Thank God.
I couldn't resist.
I feel like that
Yeah.
person knows nothing about films. Like John Travolta doesn't do action films. Gotti is all round terrible.
the only ones I could like Face Off, Swordfish, Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Again, like
Saturday
Pulp
Night
Fiction-
something.
So
that's
it's
an
like it's
action
not an
film.
action film.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, I mean,
There's loads of action in
the
there.
thing. Okay, Swordfish is an action film, like because that was the one with Hugh
One Night
Jackman
in
as a
Paris.
hacker.
No, that's the porno. I've only seen that film like. Sorry.
Why are you thinking of Paris Hilton's porn?
No, because he's in a film called like
From
like.
Paris,
From
in
Paris with Love or
From
something. Yeah,
Paris
yeah,
with Love
yeah,
is an
yeah.
action film.
It wasn't
Yes.
like original.
That was a film
That's
shot
actually- I
after
actually
One
like
Night
that
in
film.
Paris.
Yeah, I actually like that film.
See,
Forgot about that one.
that's what I'm saying. It was.
There we go. We figured it out, guys. John Travolta has done action films.
Okay.
But his makeup was appalling and gaudy.
Yeah. You ready for the second?
The thing is, when I was describing it to you guys, did you expect it to look as like?
No.
Did I do any
No.
justice to how terrible it looked in
It looks so
real
bad.
life?
So, the next one. How anyone can rate any one of these movies very high is perplexing. This is like fodder for the middle American masses. Lengthy, boring scenes of mediocre effects and dumb costumes. Brackets. The monkey suit takes the cake and sums up the whole mess. Terrible acting. Wow, they found someone who is actually worse than Harrison Ford. The director is using Joseph Campbell to lend credibility to this crap. I wonder how much money was spent on Joe to get him on the wagon. Okay, so it is a harmless movie, and some people apparently like it. But come on, better than American Beauty? Or Being John Malkovich? Or Spirits of the Dead? Or any of the Monty Python movie? Etc, etc, etc. Oh well, enjoy it. Smiley face. And 1 out of 10.
Did they actually type etc. 3 times?
Yeah, etc, etc, etc. I read them as they're written.
Yeah,
I
was just
looking who
surprised.
Joseph Campbell is. I don't know.
Options. Indiana Jones
Okay.
and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Blade Runner 2049 and Star Wars Empire Strikes Back.
Monkey suit. Monkey suit, I think, is a red herring. I think it's this person being stupid to say like they're saying monkey suit
I
kind
think
of.
it's Star Wars.
You think it's simple?
There's no
Who's
monkeys
Joseph
at all
Campbell?
in 2049.
Who's Joe Cam? Who's this
I suspect he might be a DOP,
Oh, okay.
because obviously Lucas isn't a DOP, he's a director. And I know in his first film he had a very well regarded British DOP who absolutely hated him and his entire project. Sorry, not his first film, but on A New Hope.
These are 3 really. Wait.
Where are the monkeys in Raiders of the Lost Ark or 2049?
Well, no, I mean,
Where are the monkeys in Empire Strikes Back?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Chewbacca.
Oh, it's not monkey.
This person doesn't like Star Wars. They're obviously a moron who doesn't appreciate the nuances of a Wookiee.
I love seeing Jonah get passionate about things.
I'm gonna go for 2049. I don't know. It's just my
Yeah.
gut instinct.
So,
You're going Star Wars. I'm going to go Raiders.
okay.
Sorry,
Point does go to
Raiders.
Jonah.
Hold it.
Nah, damn it.
Logic.
There are no monkeys in the other 2 films.
But the thing
or
is,
anything that looks like monkeys.
and honestly, I had an absolute hoot of a time because this is something I've talked to you
This
about.
was about Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. So I loved it because I typed in, I looked up the 1-star reviews of Empire Strikes Back, and they were the most frothing, Trekkie, 2000 IQ play reviews. I can't stop using my thesaurus to try and justify. And the best thing, as I was explaining this, is about how Star Trek. I have a problem with Star Trek because Star Trek is pseudoscience. And it's Trekkie fans like, oh my god, it's so much more smart than Star Wars. Yeah, it is. The problem is, though, it claims to be smart. Star Wars is a land of death sticks and lightsabers and Wookiees and stuff. It's stupid. It's deliberately stupid.
Space opera.
Space opera. But Star Trek masquerades as something which isn't, but then goes, the warp 29 drive.
Yeah, well, it's not the
It's
Expanse.
just-
It's
yeah,
basically,
it's
it's
just-
not
it's
the
just
It's
half-baked
just
science.
not the Expanse.
Exactly, it's not the Expanse. I'm like, if you want to go hard sci-fi, give me some Expanse. So warp speed in Star Trek is light speed, essentially, and warp 9 is 9 times the speed of light. That's what it says.
Yeah.
The problem is the scale of the universe is so big that warp speed is just not going to get you there in time. We looked up the size of the Milky Way galaxy, and it's like they'd still be having to travel for millions of years to get across it.
Yeah, I
At
think
warp 9.
if you round it to like essentially like a 10 million, it takes them something like 10 million.
10 million years to cross. So it'd be the kind of thing where it's like, well, we're going super fast, we're going 9 times the speed of light. You've evolved by the time you get there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Which is helpful because you don't know what you're going to face.
yeah, so but this is what I'm saying, is like it's just loads and loads of like it was all Trekkies being like how could anyone enjoy this nonsense when I much rather watch the Borg and set dildos up Janeway's arsehole. That's
an alternative film.
That's an alternative fact right there. Prove me wrong. I'm just saying, Jean-Luc Picard definitely got his dick cut off by the Borg. Like, that happened. I'm just saying. Anyway,
Get the fucking cybernetic replacement.
Have you seen the piston power of it, Riker?
It has 4 lights.
So, the next film. I am witnessing a decrease of IQ in scripts and directing over the last 20 years in Hollywood.
That's such a weird phrase. I'm witnessing.
Yeah.
I am standing still and watching the
Is
world.
he writing the view in the cinema?
Never quite liked this man's movies. But I have to say that I've always enjoyed a good plot and believable acting. I hate the thing that now, space, days, anyone can be a script writer and director. This movie should be offending for a man with IQ over 85. The conversation is childish. There is not one thing that makes this movie believable in any way. I will not even begin to relate to the bad acting. But hey, what can you expect from an actor playing a ridiculously fucked up character? I will end it here. Spoiler alert, he doesn't end it here. The worst thing in this movie is the gratuitous violence that marks the long conversation scenes. And Mr. Director, you are a homicidal maniac. If you have the money, fame, and many important friends, that's how it's written.
Does space N
mean the rest of us will enjoy your twisted, gratuitous violence? Please keep your Please keep your maniacal impulses to yourself and don't poison us with it. You should come forward and again spelt wrong, apologise to the German people. I have a few German friends and they are not a bunch of drunks, idiots, sadistic killers as depicted in your sick joke of a movie.
It's Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
As a human being, I'm offended of this movie and others like it and think that the world should stand up to this gratuitous violence.
It explains 20 years.
Yeah. And movies like this one should be thrown away to the trash where they can belong.
Well, they can belong.
Yeah, where they can belong.
Necessarily.
Yeah. 1 out of
would.
10 stars. The options are Inglourious Bastards, Saving Private Ryan, and Atomic Blonde.
Oh.
I'm sticking with... I went before the question was finished, so I'm going to stick with Inglourious Bastards.
I'll side with Jonah.
Damn, I was going to say that as well. I'm just thinking because...
The Atomic Blonde is not by a well-known director. It is by a lot of the same team who did John Wick.
That and also, but I don't think it wasn't 20 years though. That's the thing. Inglourious Bastards, obviously, Quentin Tarantino's been around that long.
Yeah, and Hanks and Spielberg have also been around.
That's why as soon as they said Germans, everyone just exchanged looks. Oh fuck!
It's a film.
I'm not gonna jump on the sword. Inglourious Bastards.
It is indeed Inglourious Bastards.
I'm not going to be that guy again who just goes, I'm going to choose a different one.
Like, I have 0 points.
Yeah.
But I had fun.
Okay, we've got 2.
Fuck all of you.
Consistent winner of the participation medal.
It's like, I should have a sack race at the Olympic 100 metres. Well, you guys are all doing it boringly. Fun.
We've got 2 reviews left.
2 reviews left. And
Which
then
means, Sawley, we need to get both of these, and Jonah needs to get both of them wrong for us to win. For either of us to win.
I'd like for both of us to win together.
Me?
It's not about winning, it's about fun!
No. Egg and spoon race, but you eat the egg and choke.
Shall we?
No.
What a noise!
I like to hold on to the spoon bit and then try and balance the egg on the handle.
I like to just do heroin in front of all the kids. Don't know where you guys are running, but I'm flying, baby.
Mr. James, why is the bottom of the spoon burnt?
Anyway, me and my son were shocked how great and funny.
I thought you said shot.
Great. Me and my son were shocked how great and funny movie whose budget is $50 million is so underrated and hated. That is how it's written.
Not everyone
Dude
speaks
was in a
English.
hurry.
My son and I laughed and saw this movie too entertaining for kids and adults. And the thing that convinces us to see, despite the unstoppable attack on it, is that it has already reached number 1 in the US box office. And many open-minded people did not believe the malicious hatred against a quality movie like this. 10 out of 10. Your options are The Emoji Movie, Shrek, Forever After, and Dr. Seuss's Cat in the Hat.
Emoji Movie. I'm going for Emoji Movie.
Well, this is a tricky one.
I don't think Shrek Forever After was a cinema success. As far as I remember, out of the sequels that came out, that was the fourth, right?
Yeah.
I don't think the Emoji Movie would have had a 50 million, just 50 million, because obviously I think there was a lot of advertising in it, so I guess they would have been paid for it. Never mind, I don't know, I'm just rambling.
Cat in the Hat, does that come out recently?
No, that was a while
No,
ago.
that was a while ago.
The thing is,
It was Mike Myers.
I'm thinking about the creation of
As in
IMDb.
Michael Myers,
Like,
not-
obviously, it's been around for quite a while, but I don't know if it's been around
the
that
murderer. Dressed up as a cat.
Now I have a career to pay for my murdering.
I wish I could just I wish there's good enough at editing to edit out all of Michael Myers from the original Halloween and replace him with the Cat in the Hat. Like, just, you know, that image.
Just
where
a bit when he's like with the baseball bat.
Or you know, with the image where she's walking down the road and she sees him and he walks behind that hedge, like just like boom, like off he goes, gone.
If we ever get big and you're listening back to our old episodes, please make it and send it to us.
Yeah. So Val's locked in an Emoji Movie. You
Yeah.
two have
Still
not.
need to choose.
Still need to choose. Sorry.
Emoji Movie, Cat in the Hat, no. Emoji Movie, fuck, I'm going to go Emoji Movie as well. Because it was the most recent.
And it did get loads of criticism. I don't think Cat in the Hat.
It
would
really
get
bad
criticism.
criticism. It bombed.
Can I just tell you?
It made money, but it bombed.
Can I just tell you? All of these films were hated.
Yeah.
I wasn't silly enough to be like, you know, one of them was hated. So like, have you seen the reviews for Shrek 4 or Cat
Oh
in the Hat?
no! I'm sure Shrek
Like,
4 got really bad reviews.
I'm just saying, don't go down that logic because I deliberately pick similar films.
No, I know.
You know.
I know, but
I'm going with Shrek.
I want to think.
I would have thought it would be Emoji or Shrek.
So you've gone for
Emoji.
Emoji Movie. You've gone for Shrek. The comeback's real. 1 point to Saul and Val.
Because I was thinking it probably wouldn't cost that much because it was there was a lot of advertising.
So much advertising. Yeah.
So basically, companies were paying them, so the overall outcome wouldn't be that much.
Even Stevens. This is the round that decides who wins.
This is the round that decides it all.
because
Usually Jonah's already won at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
It's just coup de grace.
Because originally I was thinking, oh, it would have cost a lot to get all that branding, but then I realised that obviously it's the other companies that
Yeah,
pay
the film-
them
Yeah, it's a
to
branding
advertise.
The film is literally just, you know,
Advertising.
on its knees being like to like YouTube or whatever. So it's not like if YouTube made them pay for their licensing, I'd be like,
Like, we would never get
no
made.
way. Do you know what I mean?
I
Like,
also loved in that review that they were like, my son and I, like, they weren't bold enough to say, I fucking loved this film.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
my son laughed a lot,
my
and
son.
because he was happy, it made me happy.
Yeah.
And just cuts to the son like, Dad, can we leave?
It's like for me, like my top 5 movies. You got Citizen Kane, you've got Shawshank Redemption, and you have got the Emoji Movie.
That's only 3 movies.
Can I point out? that
well, he's
I-
not the smartest.
I was gonna do Shawshank Redemption, but all the 1-star reviews seemed entirely fixated on the fact they hated the fact that white and a black man were friends in prison. So,
Are you serious?
yeah, they
I
were
feel
all
like
like
there's a
real
lot
bad.
of ex-cons taken to IMDb.
Yeah.
Well, it kinda
So,
is.
the next film. Oh my good.
5 stars.
A never-ending story. I'm fed up with looking at Second World War movies. It is enough.
Don't give the game away. You already said it's the never-ending story.
It's a never-ending story.
The World
Which
War-
is obviously a World War II film.
The dragon was a top Nazi.
Japanese pilot.
Falcon.
It was
Yeah.
reincarnated to
metaphor,
avenge Hiroshima.
Falcon with a little Hitler tash.
We gotta kill them all. The rock people. They're the real enemy. This movie has nothing new, any new fact. It is a simple remake of the history, which is nearly everybody now. And that's how we... Maybe it is interesting for people who do not know the history. It could be handles as an educational movie for children and teens. Because there are not really confirmed with the historical education as such in Europe. Please do not make any more movies like this. Do more inquiry. Go deeper. Inside the history. The options are Schindler's List, Downfall, or Der Untergang, as it's called in German, or Dunkirk.
I see. I already whispered to Val Dunkirk, so I'm going to lock myself in for that one. Because the thing is, I looked at Val and just went, Dunkirk, really? Because not to give away my thinking, but it's the fact that Dunkirk was the one that I think got really good reviews, but I don't think it was kind of mixed. It was a weird one. Like Schindler's List, everyone knows is a great movie, but like it's weird. No.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like nice film, Nolan stuff, and other people are like, what's it doing?
Yeah.
Because it is time jumpy. It's all over the place.
I didn't like Dunkirk, may I add.
Yeah.
But this person gave this film 1 star.
My dad took one look at the trailer and went, why are they all in winter coats? And then I don't think that was it. The film was down and he died.
He only watches films with slightly naked soldiers.
So this person agrees, go deeper inside history. This film should only be used as an education source for children and teens, according to this man.
I think it's downfall. I'm going to go
think
for
it's
downfall.
downfall. What do you think, Joe?
I was really hoping, like, when you said, like, oh, it's only for children and teens, I was really hoping you were going to say, like, Band of Brothers or something. It's like, yeah, you could show that to children.
Well, Schindler's List.
Bill Gardner's legs
Or
come off
Downfall.
the knee.
Jonah.
Or Dunkirk. Like, they're all
Jonah,
quite violent.
what you
Yeah, I
going
know,
for?
but they're not gory.
I think it would be funny if it was downfall, because go inside the history, it was very much inside the history. Like, it's
It was inside the Fuhrer bunker. For sure.
yeah, like it's as close as you can
Jonah.
get.
I'm going to go Schindler's List.
Schindler's List.
Oh, we've all gone for different ones. We have a
Ooh.
Which means there
definitive,
can only be one winner this time.
definitive winner.
And the answer is, in the words of a certain Führer, the German people have failed me. Val wins.
Yay!
This is my first
Downfall.
win.
Downfall. It was Downfall. Now, can I point out, I originally started looking for Schindler's List because it's obviously a classic.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It was like the Palestinian Defence League had taken to the IMDb 1-star page about Schindler's List because it was all just like...
What, the PLO?
Yeah, it was all just like... But all trying to obviously be like, no, it's not the fact that I just hate Jewish people. It's the reason I give this film 1 star, but it totally is. Like, one of them was just, oh, come on, again? Like, and I'm like, it's not like Schindler's List 4. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, like, he's got his list, he's checking it twice, he's dressed up as Chris Santa Claus. You know what I mean? It wasn't a sequel. Like, again, another Schindler. And one person was like, why do I always see this film on TV? And you're like,
Because it's
yeah,
good.
it's on this good film. And this person was like, 1 star, it's on too much. And I was like, you don't see that with Home Alone.
Maybe they're like
Christmas.
literally watching like Sky Schindler's List. You know how Sky comes out?
Like someone-
I'm sorry, wait.
It's a Sky Feel Bad channel. You know,
Wait, time out.
Schindler's 12 Years a Slave, just hopping between the two of them. Yeah, loads of people having to go at Steven Spielberg, being like this, yeah, so I was just like, I can't do this, because I couldn't find one just stupid opinion
That
rather than one
wasn't
racist
anti-Semitic.
opinion. So instead
The thing
I
is,
found-
stupidity and racism tend to kind of correlate.
Oh, and so one of the reviews for Downfall was so funny, because it was like some guy I have German friends and they hate it too.
Okay.
And you're like, okay, dude. And he kept bringing up the German friends. And then I saw that this film was so high on the list, so I called my German friend, and he couldn't believe it too. I was like, stop using them as you're like, I have Germans, they hate it too.
It makes it sound like they bother them for their opinions.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
not.
like, I'm not racist because I have a black friend.
Yeah, it was really like, it's not just my opinion, but and then one person was just like,
I'm
why
not a
would you...
I'm not a Nazi. I have Germans who vouch for me. Hmm?
And like some of them were there like, I can't... Obviously loads of people were completely missing the point of the film. Being like, I can't believe you make a film where you're sympathising with Hitler. I was like, if you've watched that film, it does not make you sympathise with Hitler. Like, you're the problem if you watch Downfall and go,
Poor man. Poor Führer saluting the
I
cinema,
would-
standing up.
I would.
that's
I would.
you.
I
That's
would,
not the film.
I would pay like good money to find a review of somebody who knows nothing about the Second World War and has just watched this film and has just been like, wow, that's a really depressing ending. What happened to this character?
I don't know. I think
He was a lovely family man. He had a couple of dogs. He was
Why'd
lovable.
they kill the dog? I don't get it. Why is everyone so panicked?
You'd be
like, why is he
surprised how
killing
often
himself?
it comes up and people are like, oh, in the usual kind of Hitler's worse than Stalin.
Yeah.
Like, one of the first things to come up in Hitler's defence is like, he liked dogs.
Yeah, you always get that being banded around. You know, Stalin liked Western films. You know who also likes Western films? My granddad.
Same person.
Person. And,
Oh, sorry.
Val, on the subject of your never heard of World War II review, I'm pretty sure your review would be like in Nuktaka or something. 'Cause
oh,
who
wouldn't that be
has-
so? They'd be like, why is everyone so concerned these Russians are coming? Or what are they? Are they bad house guests? I mean, it all looks nice what they've built here. Like, this underground hotel of
Who's
some
buying
kind.
all this stuff up?
Oh, this must be the sequel to Fawlty Towers. Wow, Basil's really let himself go. He's so stressed.
I hear,
He does look like Basil. Oh my god.
I hear John Cleese audition for the role.
What is it?
Wait.
I want that now. That's my headcanon.
What
Downfall
person-
is a sequel to Fawlty Towers.
Sorry, what person enjoyed Fawlty Towers, which has like like humor related to the Second World War in it occasionally, but doesn't know anything about the Second World War. Which person has like an insight into that very specific bit of British culture, but not the war?
But that's the thing I like. Yeah, exactly. But especially seeing as obviously in 40 Towers they actually reference the war in it. Well, we're with the
don't act like you haven't all been watching a show. They've made a joke and you've not got a joke and you've just ignored it. You've just not got it, so you just kind of you don't have to understand every joke.
Yeah, that's true.
I really hope that if they were to do that, then
and why are we applying logic to this theory?
No. Time out. It's not logic. No, I'm saying that it would be really, really nice in Downfall that outside of Hitler's bunker there was, a sign with like farty owls or like flowery twats.
Or to be fair, if M. Night Shyamalan directed Downfall, it would zoom out and I don't know, like Martin Bormann would climb over a fence and it would turn out that like everything was fine and it was just a social experiment and they were having this reenactment in the middle of Thorpe Park or something. There's just a lot of fat kids like, who are you? The Fuhrer's fallen. Nah, they're all lying to you. Twist. No, but so yeah, Downfall, which is a very good film and you should check it out if you haven't seen it. And the actor who died recently, he's Austrian.
Didn't the actor that played Hitler actually get discouraged massively by his representatives from taking the role because obviously he wasn't going to get a lot of work.
Yeah, and also
following.
he talked about the meme, obviously the Downfall meme, and he said that like obviously he put his heart and soul into the performance, so it's quite hard to see that it's a joke now. But he said that he still finds it funny and he enjoys it. But no, he's Austrian.
But the meme was the fun.
So Swiss. He was Swiss.
The meme was the performance is fantastic and big,
and you can put in other things that aren't as relevant.
And what makes it funny is that the things that he's like we're saying he's angry about is like it's
it
would be so stupid if he was. Yeah.
Sorry.
Just trying to get in there with the kids, James.
He's trying to get
Fortnite. There'd be a lot of people like, I do hate Fortnite.
No, Fortnite's great. The reason is
we can tag it on our video and we'll get more.
No, that too. We can add Fortnite because now we've spoken about it. I saw a person that made a great point, which is basically ever since Fortnite came out, all the other online multiplayer games he's been playing, no more children.
Yes.
They've all gone to Fortnite. So basically he's there like, I'm playing Battlefield and stuff like that, and there's just people my age.
Oh my god. I was watching the Tiny Meat gang talk about Ninja, and apparently Ninja's recently got into like properly trying to flex on people, and he's like on his Instagram story posted him going to Louis Vuitton with his wife and buying a suit, and he like still looks like shit. Because like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you still fucking lose.
Let's floss, guys. Why is no one flossing? Why is no one flossing, everyone?
It's really funny because he's got really low engagement when it comes to posts where he's trying to be like an adult showing off how much wealth he has, because kids don't fucking give a shit about that. They want to watch him play Fortnite.
Unless you're buying fucking like thousands.
I got a shiny Charizard and I ate it.
Like
I'd do that as a video.
If you want to get to, I'm just going back to like 10-year-old Jonah, $1,000 worth of pick a mix.
Yeah.
And watch.
Yeah.
Like, tell me more.
But he can't eat all that pick a mix. He said like, I've eaten just half of it. Yeah, I could finish it off, I reckon. I'm gonna watch it all the way to the end.
No. You know what? You know what?
Jonah means sick on himself. Like, this is what you become.
No, the comments are gonna be like, my mum bought me 3 of those.
My 10-year-old self was cool. He had a raccoon.
In all fairness, but with 10 wait, at the time of 10-year-old Jonah, that pick a mix probably was taken from Woolworths.
I thought you were going to make some joke like I'm really old and it was just mint imperials and humbugs.
All stuck together like a mega granny.
Like, I'm going to just eat 20 bags of Werther's Originals.
Pear drops.
They're all stuck together. It's called pick and mix because you have to
you have to mine.
Now, the trick is, kids, do half a bag at a time. No chewing. That's the rules. No chewing.
Oh, can you imagine just...
That's such a convincing sound. Oh my god,
the thing is, obviously, with pick and mix, like when you think about pick and mix, it's obviously like it's gooey and it's so you can like shovel it in.
Gooey.
Like so many old sweets are so, you know what I mean, like they like Haribo. It's you can bite it, chew it, it's gummy. Yeah. Imagine now having a big Haribo
to choke on, yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole barrel, but like of old school like cola cubes, like sherbet lemons.
Dolly mix.
You have to shove a whole load of them in your mouth at once. You'd be there like teeth.
The milk chocolate mice mixed in with with Dolly mix.
Yeah, and covered in like I'm half licorice, half sour now. Who don't want me? Okay, and that is the end of.
My life?
No, I just
my
can't
Who
remember.
let
discussions
them
and
near the
opinions.
keyboard?
Who let them near a keyboard? The winner is Val. Because this is the first canon round with the new title, Val is 1-up on everyone. So well
Thank you. I
Mine,
will wear
like-
this belt well.
Watch me never win again. Like, all my history, all my wins just.
The time, the era's changed. You're like France now, and welcome to the 20th century. So I'm going to go well
just
for you for a while.
advancing on German heavy machine guns and red trousers.
Boys, I know you really enjoyed talking about Peter the Great. Well, guess what? More Russia. More fucking Russia. We're going to be talking about the
Dyatlov Pass.
Dyatlov Pass incident.
Ooh.
So get your ears ready for some Russian piracy cons. Piracy con theories is a segment where we try our hardest to avoid the C word that gets people demonetized, and it's a place where I delve deep into the dark parts of the internet and try and dig out some alternative facts that have been presented as ultimate truth. So, as I said, we will be discussing some more Russian mysteries now, when we will be talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident. Do you guys know anything about the Dyatlov Pass incident? You
No.
must have seen some weird, annoying documentaries about Yetis, or, James and I, we saw a horror film on the Horror Channel where they basically proposed that it was some Yeti monsters that lived in a bunker somewhere there. Before we dive into those beautiful piracy cons, let's first think back to that fateful night when the 9 Soviet students hiked down through the Ural Mountains.
So what year was this?
So this was in 1959, on January the 31st. So 9 Soviet students, who were all experienced hikers, they were part of a sports club, decided that they were going to take on this challenge and hike through this very difficult terrain to get to a particular point. I don't specifically remember what the name of the point is, but that doesn't matter. They never get there. Essentially what happens is that the weather conditions get really, really bad. They lose their way, and because they didn't want to lose progress, and maybe because they didn't want to stop hiking, maybe they just thought, okay, we might not get to the point that we were headed to, but at least we can get some experience here. Because they were all adventurers, as I said, very experienced. So the group comprised, if I'm not mistaken, of 7 men and 2 women. So this area is now called the Dyatlov Pass, and it's named after the leader of the group, whose name was Igor Dyatlov. So as they traversed through this mountainous region, they decided to make camp by Kolatsiakil, which is actually very ominously translated to Dead Mountain, not in Russian, but in Mansi, which is the name of the indigenous people that live in that area. And so that's where they were camped. The reason we know this is that when February the 20th came around, the families of the people who went off were like, well, why have they been gone for so long? It really shouldn't have taken so long. I mean, it was difficult terrain for sure, but it shouldn't have taken them more than 2 weeks to go and return. But at this point, it was nearly a month. And so they were putting pressure on government officials to go and investigate this. So a volunteer force was put together, and they were expecting to find, the obvious. The fact that these people died on the way there. They looked for them initially on the trail that they had planned out, because obviously they had to do loads of documentation, because as well as being a sports club, they were also adventurers, explorers and things like that. And this journey, I think, hasn't been done by a lot of people before, so it was kind of like an academic thing as well, which is why there is so much evidence for how weird this thing is because a lot of the people that came, they wrote diaries, and there was also photographs, which is really eerie when you think about it now. So very much like if do you remember when we were watching The Terror, and they were talking about diary extracts, or Balloon Boys, for instance, with the photographs. We have so much evidence because of that. It makes it seem so much more real. So when the volunteer force finally got to Kolatsiakil, what they found was a tent, or what was a tent, because the tent had actually been cut open from the inside, and their belongings, a lot of their food, their shoes, were left inside. And there were footprints heading from the camp, which indicated that the people who were staying in the camp had traversed this area, which was snowing, by the way. The temperature at this point was ranging between minus 13 degrees Celsius to minus 20. So it's not the best weather to go barefoot and underdressed in. They followed the footsteps about a mile towards the tree line, and they found the remains of a fire, and around it were 2 people, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, 2 men who were completely like underdressed. They were literally in their underwear and their socks, and they were basically like around the fire. They were frozen solid, which is not surprising considering the weather conditions. When they went further into the tree line, they found the remains of Dyatlov, the leader of the group, Zinaida, who was one of the women that came on this journey, and Rustem Slobodin, who was another leader in the group, who had seemed to have died on their way back to the camp. These three were dressed, but again, clearly very haphazardly, and they were just frozen. There was
shoes or no shoes?
It seems like everybody didn't have any shoes.
Okay, that's weird.
They all showed no external damage, so they were just frozen. And so, of course, that means that we've got 5 people that we found, and there were 4 remaining. The 4 remaining ones took them a really long time to find because they just didn't expect to find them where they were. They were 75 meters even further into the woods, and they were in a ravine. And 2 of them had significant skull damage that would be something that could only be caused by a huge force, like something like a car crash. But again, there is no external damage on the outside. So it's like their skull like collapsed in on itself from a huge force.
But no like bruising or
nothing like that. It was really weird. So as I said, they found the 4. 2 of them had significant skull damage. One of them, the other woman, Ludmila, she was missing her tongue, her eyes and part of her lips, as well as a fragment of her skull bone. So they've hypothesized that could have happened from scavenging animals or something like that, but because it's so specific, so say for example the tongue, because it's soft tissue, it would make sense, but because it was so frozen, they couldn't quite figure out why the rest of her body would be missing in such specific places, I would say.
Instead of like just animals scavenging and just chewing bits off.
And they go for a lot of things. And the thing is that we've got the reason why the second group that were in the ravine is very important is because that indicates to us that they died at different times.
Everyone's like so like sternly looking at you.
It's a really fascinating story because it's such a great mystery, and there's so many theories about what happened to them. So the first idea that people had was that they might have been ambushed by the indigenous people that live there, so the Mansi people.
And that was
the leading theory.
That was the leading theory at the time. Which actually led to loads of reactionary violence against this community.
This community had historically been incredibly peaceful, had never attacked people. There have been like other groups that have hiked through the region, and they collaborated with them in peace. They would like sell them food or something like that.
Russian Inuits is the best way to think of them.
I think a lot of people don't really realise how many different tribes exist in Russia because it's massive. Ethnicities. Okay, and also another reason is that the damage couldn't have been human because it was impact damage. Like it was like the 2 people that they found in the ravine. It was like they were hit by a car. That's the kind of force there was.
Which began the second theory,
which was an avalanche. This theory was contested by the Russian officials because, of course, these guys who went on this mission. By the way, these guys were in their 20s. They were all our age. They were very experienced though because they'd been hiking from the age of like 12 up until then. They would not have camped somewhere that was prone to avalanches.
And also surely because of the weather staying the same. I mean, how many days after did they find the bodies? They found
the bodies in February, but the expedition to find them started in February, but it went on until March because it was so frozen.
But still, that's the thing. Like, surely the evidence of an avalanche would still be there.
Exactly. Yeah. There was no evidence of an avalanche, and still meteorological data shows there had been no avalanches there before. There was no evidence of an avalanche then, and there haven't been any avalanches in that area since.
Yeah, the area they picked to camp was actually what when professional hikers and mountaineers came in, were like, that's where you camp.
Yeah.
Because it's not an avalanche zone. You would see this spot and go, we're not going to get hit by an avalanche there.
Of course, a lot of them died of hypothermia. So a researcher suggested looking at the but the lesser known side effects of hypothermia, some of which are like nausea, confusion, and a big one is paradoxical undressing. This is what happens when you are in severely cold conditions and you just start taking all your clothes off.
You're essentially the burning sensation
of the cold. You want to take your clothes off. Yeah.
It essentially, for example, frostbite is something where it feels almost like your finger is on fire. An early frostbite set.
It's your receptor cells shutting down, which is a horrible pain.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. that's the feeling. That's why they're so similar, because it's literally just your receptors just turning
It's
off.
why it's referred to as a cold burn
Yeah.
when you get one. But the point is that paradoxical undressing is where obviously people are so hypothermic that they're getting this hot, kind of fiery feeling across their body, so they start taking off their clothes.
Which would explain why Yuri and the other Yuri who were by the campfire were undressed, potentially. However, why did they try and cut themselves out of a tent which was going to be a warm place?
This is the problem.
The problem with all of these theories is, why would they leave the tent?
The thing is, the problem with these theories is the fact that they, each one can be used to explain a part of
but
it,
not all.
but not the entire story.
Yeah.
So, for example, you'd be like, "Oh, why were they so undressed?" Paradoxical undressing.
Yeah.
Other people would be like, "Why did they leave the tent in such a rush?" Well, the avalanche was coming, kind of thing. That's why they cope in the tent. Again, but the problem is that none of the theories
Fit together
or make much sense when you scrutinize.
And the thing is that they can't work together.
Yeah.
And another idea that they had, okay, no avalanche, maybe the group had an argument. Of course, that's possible. They could have had an argument.
Yeah,
but it
I
doesn't...
often, when I have an argument, especially in a tent, I instead of just using the zip, I like to make a dramatic exit with a knife.
You take off all your clothes, you cut it open, after stealing someone's tongue, and you run off down the mountain, bollock.
Whatever argument they had must have been bad enough for them to cut the tent open and run for their lives, because that's what they were doing.
They proved that they were running, and also the fact that they had been around. Do you remember they had been? The times of death are so far apart.
Yeah.
It's so, for example, some of the
It's
group,
like they became isolated from one another.
It's like some of the group were wearing the clothing of others, so they had stripped.
When they'd found the bodies of the, I think the three, with the group with the first woman, she was wearing the clothes of one of her other comrades, and she must have died first, because then her male counterpart was wearing her fur hat and things like that.
So people had been scavenging from one another at some point. So they didn't all just die in one event.
So somebody died first, then
Someone took their clothing. And,
So this is crazy, right? And
there's another, for example, people...
For the listeners at home, Saul is looking perplexed around the room with a
he's looking for evidence.
brow. No, just staring down the floor.
And
What?
Another thing is that the theory was that obviously bad weather must have been a factor, because these people get, like, for example, a couple of the bodies were found only kind of a couple of meters or so from the actual campsite.
Yeah.
Going back. So obviously, like, they had been wandering to try and get back to the campsite and died en route. So it must have been incredibly bad conditions. And also, which again rules out the kind of avalanche theory, because, like, well, if it was an avalanche, it would have taken the entire camp with it.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be going back to the same place. Even if somehow your campsite miraculously survived the avalanche, as a trained mountaineer, you wouldn't go, "Oh, let's go back to where it should all be," because it would be.
And if they had an argument, as we've said, when you argue with someone, you take your shit with you, because you want to be independent. You don't want to depend on someone. You don't want to cut their tent open. That's just not what you do. And they were more experienced than to do something so stupid. Another idea that came about really recently was about a natural phenomenon, which is an infrasound wave that happens with particular weather conditions. It's essentially give me a moment.
It curls.
It's called the Kármán vortex street. This is what the phenomenon's called, and essentially it's an oscillating pattern that emerges when a fluid or gas, in this instance wind, flows around a suitably shaped object.
So
in this instance, a mountain. And when they occur on such a large scale, these wind patterns can theoretically generate very low frequency sound waves that have been blamed for harmful physiological and psychological symptoms in human beings. So according to a 2001 review of the medical literature by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, such symptoms range from annoyance to fatigue to nausea, which are quite minor, but in combination maybe with other things could have been the reason why. But I mean, this is again very like, what if maybe
I don't suppose it has the actual frequency.
It doesn't, I'm afraid so.
Because that's the thing, like, low, but how low are we talking? Are we talking like below 20 hertz? Because that's basically, is it audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, the problem I have with this, and it's so often the case with so many of these things. Obviously, to rope back in, to the mines last in France, is the fact that the problem with Dyatlov Pass is obviously there are no survivors.
No.
And the thing is, when you get cases like this, and say with crime as well, when you get just mass wipings out of everyone connected, it's so difficult to begin to work out what the hell's happened.
I think especially when you discover something that is either everyone's dead or is abandoned, like the Mary Celeste. Like, it's just because it's just perplexing.
Yeah, you're like, because there's no one
can give any hint.
For example, if you were to commit crime in a city and all the people involved are to die, usually it's going off everybody in all these other human beings who are very close by.
Yeah.
Whereas out in the middle of a cabin, if you come into a cabin and you've got, say, Jane and a John Doe just dead on the floor, it's almost impossible to work out what happened to these people.
Yeah, of course. So I would think we, as a four, would agree that neither of these theories really explain the whole thing, or really work well with one another to explain.
I think
the murder of the night.
Yeah, we know the reason why they took off their clothes. That's really it.
That's it. That's all we know. We know the dead from the
But the
cold.
thing is,
we don't know what.
But this is my counterpoint to that: is the fact that paradoxical undressing is something that professional mountaineers would be aware of.
Of course. And
so the point is that
yeah, it's true.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like the
They'd
kind
stop
of
each
thing
other.
where
Would they know about it in 1959?
Yes.
Yeah.
They would. They.
I mean, we knew about it. We knew about it with Arctic expeditions.
Okay, fair enough.
So the thing is, what I'm saying is, with this instance, is the fact that I find it's so I don't know, like the whole it's a frequency thing that did this to people. It's like I know it's in my opinion it's the lazy man's like miracle.
Well, you know what's
No,
even
hear me out,
lazier? It's the Yeti, which is the theory I didn't even want to bring up because I just think it's ridiculous. They're basically talking about this Menk, which is like the Russian version of a Yeti, that must have pushed these people apart, that must have scared them, but there were no bite marks. It's just like
who says the Yeti doesn't eat berries?
There's no external damage. So like, yes, there is force impact, but what was it? Was it a gust of wind? Like there is no real evidence, and the reason for that is because the public weren't allowed to look at the bodies for the longest time.
Because I was thinking, like, I mean, are there any wild animals in the area? Are there like bears and things? Because like,
well, I don't know.
The things I'm not a mountaineer, but like, I mean, if you heard like a particularly large bear approaching your camp, would you cut it and run?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, but then again, that explains some of it. But then again, 2 of the heads were caved in.
Yeah.
That it doesn't explain that bit.
They weren't eaten. None of their body parts.
No, but I'm saying the fact that maybe they ran away. Maybe they heard something approaching the tent and panicked.
You wouldn't cut from a bear.
Okay.
Most like
you just stay still in the
unless
tent.
it was the kind of thing where like there was a bear in the area that was renowned for eating people. Because I remember it was up in Alaska. We were driving back from a tour, and they were like, one of these campsites is closed because there was an encounter with a bear. Also, it's a problem when bears start working out there are people there. And you don't want to be in conflict with bears because when they see something as their territory, they get a bit antsy. But by all accounts, the encounter went something like: guy heard something outside his tent. He stuck his head out, came face to face with a bear, and it's like that kind of gif of the guy walking out of his house and into that black bear on his drive. Pretty much that is he stuck his head out and the bear was like ah. He was like ah, and the bear went off. But like, the point is they move in case bears, because the more you're around bears, chances are they'll kill you. But
they also, bears have figured out that humans bring food. So they often come scavenging more than hunting humans. The whole don't leave lunch in your car in Bear County.
But again,
because the bear's going to just rip the car door off and eat your packed lunch.
These are experienced Russian hikers who would have known what to do if there was a bear. This was clearly not like a planned operation or a planned response. Panic.
But can I just go back to what I was saying about the frequency thing? The frequency thing boils down to one, and it always bothers me because, as I said, it's the lazy man's miracle that really annoys me. It's the scientific miracle, which is just chalking all of something very strange down to people are stupid or going mad.
Oh yeah, like
it's
a singular phenomenon.
Because the thing is, if you boil down any kind of logical kind of scene of any kind of incident or any human behaviour, you can chalk it down to human beings are mad.
Yeah.
You could chalk it down to just, let's say for example, you could be like, why did this person, and the thing is, people throw this around all the time, but it's not something you ever use in criminal investigation. You don't go in and just go, mad, because it doesn't solve anything. And that's what I'm saying, is it bothers me when people are like, this frequency drove all these hikers mad and they just like killed one another or ripped up their tent and went loony. And
I'm smelling a supernatural explanation here.
No, there isn't a supernatural explanation.
I mean, there are supernatural theories.
There obviously
there's UFOs because her tissue was taken, and then there's the Yeti. But
you said pictures.
But yes, there are pictures, and that's what I was going to lead to next. So my favorite thing, my favorite theory, I would say, is that this was a military cover-up, because these kids were very well trained, and they set off to go and do this thing. And yeah, you could suggest that they went there and they didn't know what they found, or you could say that they were there because they were sent there. Considering the fact that the government took so long to respond to their absence is a bit sketchy. But what is also sketchy is that when they found their bodies, they had radiation sickness. Like, they were yellowish in tone. If you encountered something that was radioactive, they had really, really high levels of radiation sickness. Some of them, their bodies were yellow. When the families of the people who were involved in this incident didn't get their bodies back until years later. It was kept hush hush. It was classified. The area where they went was banned and protected by military for 3 years because they didn't want anybody to go there seeking their luck. But the thing is that before then, so the Dyatlov Pass group go off, right? And there is another hiking group that is in the nearby area, and they reported seeing orange orbs in the sky, which could have been explosions, which is it's something that an official that was working the case back then has said 30 years later when asked about it for a small Kazakh channel. Because obviously in times of USSR, everything was really, really hush-hush. So whatever this was, because it was classified, we're never going to find out. So the interesting thing about the orange orbs thing is that there are pictures that I will be putting in right now. Here you go. It's not, they're not super clear pictures. They look really blurry. But the thing is that taking a picture back in the day was a real, purposeful thing. You don't just take a picture. You have to set it up. You have to do it. And this picture, although it doesn't show any concrete shapes, definitely shows some kind of impact. So the idea is that they were potential explosions in the area.
People theorized that they were testing, the Soviets were testing some kind of airburst explosive in the area, and that may have led to the entire event because either it went off too close to the camp and spooked them, or whatever. People theorize that that's what happened.
The thing is, though, if it was an explosion, if it was them testing a weapon of some kind, it would have caused some displacement of snow. You would imagine, right? Like an avalanche, right?
Not in that area.
Not in the avalanche, but I mean some movement. But you don't see that.
If it was airborne, the thing is, it depends on
airburst, because obviously airburst goes up in the sky.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. It goes up into the sky and explodes, and then let's say they just died of cold and radiation sickness
from an airburst missile.
Yeah. It's just so
rocket.
Tragic.
The
It's
thing,
9 kids, and
think
they're
about
just
it.
dead.
You're in a tent and you start hearing. Because the thing is, one thing that I was when you mentioned the frequency, one thing I was going to ask was the fact that until you said low frequency, because I was thinking if it was a high frequency, it would sound like a bomb dropping. And the thing is, maybe that would spook you. But then now you're saying, it potentially was just explosions. And the thing is, if you're in a tent and you start hearing explosions above your head, you would try and get out of the area. ASAP.
Yeah.
Well, this is all I have on the Dyatlov Pass incident at the moment. I know that I read some articles from Russian newspapers because I'm very fortunate that I can read in Russian. But they've relaunched the investigation in 2017 to understand more about what happened to these people, because obviously our technology in terms of analysing corpses is a lot more advanced now, and the families have asked for it. And so I think more evidence is going to be coming out soon, hopefully. But it's a very interesting case. I think it's one of those great mysteries that I guess we'll never know.
I know for sure what happened.
What happened?
Oh, he said it with a smile.
He did, because we've all seen Monsters Inc.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Okay, and we've seen that bit. It's my last point. We've seen that bit.
With the
this is
Yeti
a
and the
short
Yeti?
point.
Yeah, where they get kicked out to the Yeti. What if he, when they cut a bit from the scene where Mike and Sully take out their rage about being kicked out of Monster Town upon the people of Dyatlov Pass?
You think Monsters Inc. is set in 1959?
We have no evidence that it wasn't.
Actually, we don't know that those doors don't travel back in time.
Yeah, so there's my theory. Mike and Sully killed them.
Yep.
Because think about this, yeah? You poke your head out of a tent, one big green eye. Wah! He's angry. Randall messed them over.
Oh my god.
Okay. Exactly. Cut
That's
your way
not-
out of that tent.
That's not a bad conspiracy.
Yeah. Sully's strong enough to crush a couple of heads.
Wait, time out. You just said you open the tent, you come face to face with him. So then you're saying he then closes the tent and then cuts his way out of the tent.
Yeah, because he's at the entrance.
Oh, okay. So
He's
you
blocked-
want
it's
to
like
make
Bond,
you make a back door to
You
the
make a
tent.
back door, you roll out. You know?
Oh my god, another thing I didn't mention is that there is dispute, since they've relaunched the investigation, about how many people went, because on record it's 9, but there are 10 bodies found. Ooh. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Late Shift. Hope you enjoyed the spooks and the theories and our new format. We'll see you next week, because we're gonna try very hard to do weekly, but I didn't say that in case it doesn't work. So thank you very much for being with us again. Have a wonderful week. Bye.
Goodbye.